Chapter 176. Imperial Heritage. Qin Qing and Long Chen stepped down from the stairs, and stood with their swords raised on the bluestone plaza street behind the city gate. More and more people gathered to watch. Ever since Long Chen and the others had broken down the city gate, people from all over the imperial capital rushed in like a tidal wave. The people from the Pill Tower also arrived immediately. When they saw Long Chen and Qin Qing confronting each other, even Lu Zhongwan frowned deeply. President, if those 10 return to Void Stage cultivators attack, Grandmaster Long Chen will definitely not be a match for them. Should we step in and protect him? That's right. Grandmaster Long Chen's understanding of the Tao of alchemy can be said to be heavenly. Because of his explanations, several King Stage alchemists have appeared in our Pill Tower in a short period of time. Moreover, he is Yi's master. I don't believe that the Black Dragon Empire would dare to attack the Alchemist Guild. Lu Zhongwan smiled bitterly and shook his head. He said in a deep voice, it's useless. Since Qin Feng has already summoned these 10 people, he must be determined to kill them. Moreover, I'm afraid that Long Chen will not back down. Lu Zhongwan had some understanding of Long Chen. He knew that today's battle would not be settled with just a few words. Lu Yi and Yanli, who were beside him, also had worried expressions on their faces. After Long Chen had left that day, Yanli had directly killed Oyezi after returning to the Pill Pagoda. Everything that had happened in the illusion had made her feel no guilt at all. Instead, she felt a sense of relief. She clearly knew that if she didn't kill Oyezi, she wouldn't be able to eat or sleep in peace. Therefore, he was very grateful to Long Chen. However, with her cultivation, there was nothing she could do in such a battle. While everyone was discussing, Long Chen and Qin Qing had already exchanged dozens of moves to test each other's strength. Both of them were equally matched. Meanwhile, Qin Qing's death aura was getting stronger and stronger. Let's fight to the death within 3 moves. Qin Qing stared at Long Chen and said coldly. As his voice fell, he waved the dark green longsword in his hand, and waves of boundless green rippled out. Wherever the sword shadow passed, tornadoes of over 1,000 feet rose from the ground. Just as Long Chen was about to move, he realized that he couldn't move an inch. The strong winds that blew from all directions were like vines that were indestructible. They actually forcefully bound Long Chen to the spot. Grass, tree, gale, kill. As soon as he finished speaking, the tornadoes from all directions rushed toward Long Chen. Essence of grass and wood, sword force of gale. To be able to cultivate the sword art to such a level, it's already not bad. Long Chen stood in place without moving. However, when the countless attacks landed within a radius of 300 meters around him, they had no intention of advancing any further. Long Chen's body flickered with golden light. He waved the longsword in his hand and countless sword lights shot out. Streaks of piercingly cold sword will spread out. Even though they were far away, they could still feel the chilling intent. Puff, puff, streaks of sword will sank into Qin Qing's attack. In the blink of an eye, his attack began to disintegrate. The original sword force and sword will dissipated inch by inch. Such a violent attack was easily resolved by Long Chen in front of countless people. Everyone's expression changed slightly. It should be known that Qin Qing had already reached the Void Return stage, and his sword art was at the point of perfection. Even the 10 ghost-masked men behind Qin Feng had a faint hint of surprise in their eyes. However, they quickly regained their composure. How can this be? You can actually break all of my sword force with just sword force and sword move. Qin Qing cried out involuntarily. His whole body was filled with a deathly aura. Qin Qing had been in the military for a long time, and he had an old illness. Although his life was at stake, he had full confidence in his sword art. He had been practicing the sword since he was 10 years old, and now he had comprehended sword force and sword will. However, he had never expected that Long Chen's sword force would break through his sword force. Do you still want to fight? Long Chen asked indifferently. Although Qin Qing now had the strength of the Void Return stage, Long Chen had activated the power of his bloodline and the Golden Dragon body, so he was not afraid of him at all. As for his sword art, let alone Qin Qing, he was not even afraid of the people from the 5 great sects, the Wanjian sect. Qin Qing's face was ashen. He knew that it was impossible for him to defeat Longchen today. However, he still attacked. This was an extremely intense sword will. The sword will was neither too big nor too small, and it was as thick as a thumb. Wherever it passed, it was like a gentle breeze. However, the moment this ordinary sword will was released, Qin Qing's entire body withered. Then, he fell to the ground and did not get up. However, his eyes were fixed on Longchen. It was as if he wanted to see Longchen's death with this sword will. The moment this sword will was released, even Longchen could not help but retreat in fright. His brows were deeply furrowed. This strike contained almost all of Qin Qing's strength. That was fine, but the obsession of being on the verge of death caused him to be extremely shocked. As Longchen retreated, this sword will actually closely followed him. However, Longchen continued to retreat. At the same time, his powerful divine sense quickly enveloped the sword will in an attempt to erase the sword will. After more than 10 breaths of time, Longchen suddenly stopped. The golden scale armor on his hands surged and forcefully tore apart this sword will. However, his hands were covered in blood and the scale armor was overturned. At the same time, Qin Qing's eyes closed. The former monarch of the Black Dragon Empire had died just like that. Seeing Qin Qing die, countless people sighed and glared angrily at Longchen. However, only Qin Feng's smile grew wider. Qin Qing's death did not seem to make him sad at all. Instead, he felt a trace of excitement. He walked forward and shouted at Longchen, "Tisk tsk, I didn't expect you to still have some strength. If you were given another 1 or 2 years, I'm afraid no one in the 9 great empires would be able to withstand your sharpness. However, do you have the guts to kill me now?" Qin Feng's provocation was self-evident. He could not mobilize the 10 devil-masked black robes behind him. At this moment, he wanted nothing more than for Longchen to attack him right now. He could not wait to see Longchen's blood splatter on the spot. The 10 people behind Qin Feng did not move at all. Behind their ashen white masks were pairs of chilling eyes. Although Qin Qing was not the monarch at this moment, his death still caused these 10 people to emit killing intent. Seeing this scene, Lu Zonglan finally could not help but stand up. No matter what, he had to say something. "Longchen, these 10 people are all living dead. They only have one chance to attack. Their cultivation is not something Qin Qing can compare to. Don't be rash. As long as you return to the Pill Tower with me, I don't believe the Black Dragon Empire will dare to disregard the dignity of the Pill Tower," Lu Zonglan said coldly. Qin Feng's face fell when he heard this. He turned to look at the tunnel below the city wall and said in a low voice, "You can be a coward, but Qin Lai is not an alchemist. I want to see how the Pill Tower will protect him. Didn't you want to kill me? Now that I'm standing in front of you, what can you do?" Qin Feng sneered. Longchen shook his head slightly at Lu Zonglan. Lu Zonglan smiled bitterly. He knew that with Longchen's personality, it was impossible for him to agree. However, looking at the 10 devil-masked black robes on the stage, his heart sank. Chapter 177. The Return to Void Stage Cultivator makes a move under the gazes of thousands of people. Everyone was subdued by Longchen's strength. He left the Blue Dragon Empire and headed to the Great Qian Empire. In one day, he became the top 3 on the heaven roll and forced the Jianshi San to retreat. After that, he killed Huang Pili with a single sword strike while facing over 100 late soul formation stage cultivators, shocking the Great Qian Empire. Then, he accompanied the third prince and defeated the Great Qian Empire's army of 300,000 with 30,000 soldiers. Now, he broke through the gates of the Black Dragon Empire with the help of the people behind him, broke through the siege of tens of thousands of spirit-shattering heavy crossbows, and killed the emperor of the Exalted Man Nation, Qin Qing. These earth-shattering events caused everyone in the imperial capital to sigh. Many people even subconsciously hoped that Longchen would retreat. With his talent, he definitely wouldn't be an ordinary person in the future. Unfortunately, he didn't choose to retreat. Instead, he slowly walked up the city wall. As he walked, his aura increased explosively with each step. He looked at Lu Tsonglan from afar and said, "Today, my life is in your hands." Boom! Boom boom! As soon as Long Chen's voice fell, countless amounts of spirit energy poured out from his right foot. A crack that stretched for 100 meters appeared on the city wall. One step, another step. Every step was like the movement of a giant beast. The earth shook and the sky changed color, an unprecedented pressure spread around Long Chen. Everyone's faces were filled with pain as they felt the boundless pressure coming from Long Chen's body. Seeing the change in Long Chen's temperament, Qin Feng's expression changed abruptly. He hurriedly retreated. The 10 ghost-faced figures behind him also moved to protect him. This kid is using some kind of secret technique. It seems like he's crazily urging the spirit energy in his sea of vital energy. One of the ghost-faced figures hissed. The 10 of them stood in front of Long Chen and stared at him as if they were facing a great enemy. The leader said, "This kid's cultivation, martial skills, and bloodline are all terrifying. We can't underestimate him. Qin Qing is dead. Qin Feng is the emperor. We can't let anything happen to him." As they spoke, they sealed off Long Chen from all directions. Long Chen looked at the 10 people. He knew that with his original strength, it was impossible for him to defeat these 10 true Return to Void stage experts who were known as the foundation of the Black Dragon Empire. Qin Qing's combat prowess was comparable to a Return to Void stage mighty figure, but in reality, he was still not a Return to Void stage mighty figure. At the Return to Void stage, one would have already refined their divine soul and condensed the golden core. Their divine sense would be able to kill enemies from 1,000 miles away. Some of them could even possess the bodies of others to prolong their lives. It could be said that stepping into the Return to Void stage and the Soul Formation stage were worlds apart. Therefore, Long Chen immediately used a secret technique. He wanted to resolve this matter as soon as possible. Long Chen, who was relying on his sea of qi, had reached an unprecedented level when he used his secret technique. The spiritual power in his body pulsed wildly, as if it was about to burst out of his body. "Kill him for me, haha." The moment the 10 ghost faces surrounded Long Chen, Qin Feng seemed to feel a little safer. He immediately ordered a few people to attack Long Chen and kill him. As Qin Feng's voice fell, rays of spiritual light appeared around the 10 people. Their dantian flickered as if there were scorching suns. At the same time, 10 extremely powerful divine senses pressed down on Long Chen. Everyone, including Qin Feng, felt their minds tremble. It was as if there was a thunderous sound, and they couldn't help but kneel on the ground. This was the pressure of divine senses. After reaching the Return to Void stage, their divine senses had been refined and they could use their divine senses to produce divine senses. Immediately after, the 10 people stretched out their hands. The countless spirit-destroying crossbow bolts that were shot out from all directions suddenly flew into the sky. Tens of thousands of crossbow bolts were aimed directly at Long Chen. Everyone's swords and sabers flew into the sky uncontrollably. Is this the true Return to Void stage? Refining one's divine sense, controlling objects with divine sense, and fighting against Soul Formation stage cultivators. They're in an invincible position. These 10 people are all Return to Void stage cultivators. As expected of the Black Dragon Empire's trump card. However, they can only attack once. I'm afraid that this casual attack will kill one of them. The 10 people moved slightly. Just by staring at Long Chen, the changes in their surroundings were enough to make everyone tremble in fear. Divine senses? Break for me. However, in the next moment, a terrifying scene appeared. Tens of thousands of crossbow bolts were aimed at Long Chen. As he took a step forward, a storm appeared in the sky. For a moment, smoke and dust flew everywhere. The tens of thousands of spirit-destroying heavy crossbow bolts directly fell down. At the same time, everyone felt the inexplicably powerful divine senses from the 10 Return to Void stage cultivators completely disappear. It was as if they were blocked by some kind of barrier. What's going on? Long Chen is clearly only at the Soul Formation stage. How can he ignore the divine senses of 10 Return to Void stage cultivators? There's something strange about this guy. Whether it's his combat strength or martial skills, they're really terrifying. The divine senses of return to void stage cultivators can't hurt him at all. It's completely useless. It's unbelievable. This scene really shocked everyone speechless. A soul formation stage cultivator could ignore the divine senses of 10 return to void stage cultivators. If you want to defeat me, divine senses won't be enough. Long Chen's words made the 10 or so ghost-faced black shadows tremble. The scene in front of them set off a huge wave in their hearts. The 10 of them looked at each other and saw the horror in each other's eyes under the masks. As return to void stage cultivators, they couldn't even use their divine senses at this moment. This was because once they spread out their divine senses, it was like duckweed in the sea. It was forcibly shattered. In fact, they should be thankful that the Dragon Palace was hidden in their knowledge sea. After Long Chen's rebirth, although his divine senses were still at the sovereign level, he couldn't use any divine abilities at all. Otherwise, he wouldn't even need to move to kill them. Just a glance would be enough to kill them. At this moment, Long Chen was only using his powerful divine senses to shatter the divine sense attacks launched by the 10 of them. It was a piece of cake for him. However, if he wanted to restore his divine senses to the past, he would have to step into the return to void stage to do so. The 5 of you, attack first. Use all your strength. You must kill him in one blow. This guy's combat strength is too strange, the leader said. As his voice fell, the 5 return to void stage cultivators in front of him stepped forward. At the same time, the black robes around their bodies instantly burned. Countless inscriptions appeared in the air. In just a moment, there were 3 places around the 5 of them that were filled with intense spiritual light. The surrounding air was distorted. At this moment, they had recovered to their peak. They were truly returned to void stage cultivators. However, they were also like Qin Qing. No matter who won today, only death awaited them. Out of the 10 ghost-faced black shadows, 5 of them attacked at once. This was enough to show how wary they were of Long Chen. The scene just now had really shocked them. They even felt their hearts palpitate. Chapter 178. Intimidating, the 5 return to void stage cultivators exuded a powerful spiritual might that seemed to have caused the surrounding air to heat up slightly. Long Chen stood in the middle of the crowd, golden dragon essence fluctuating around his body. His sea of qi was 100,000 kilometers wide and could be said to be unparalleled in the world. It would be fine if that was all, but in reality, the sea of qi was not ordinary spirit power, but dragon essence. Facing 5 return to void stage cultivators, Long Chen, who was using a secret technique, did not have the slightest fear. In the eyes of the crowd, death was certain, but in Long Chen's eyes, he could easily break through it. Buzz! Before the 5 people could make a move, Long Chen waved the long sword in his hand, and thunder and fire slowly appeared. Battle technique, thunder and fire. As Long Chen's voice fell, he disappeared from the spot. When he reappeared, he had already rushed to the nearest person. He waved the long sword in his hand, and a spirit light instantly ignited, like a sea of fire crashing down on the person. So fast. The expression of the return to void stage cultivator changed greatly, but his reaction was also very fast. The long sword in his hand instantly drew a strange arc around his body, and then countless stone spikes rose from the ground, full of spirit light. The other 4 people did not expect Long Chen to dare to make the first move in such a situation. They were not slow at all, and almost instantly, they made a move. Majestic spirit power pressed down on Long Chen like a huge mountain. The sword in each of their hands was enough to kill any soul transformation stage cultivator. Long Chen's figure was buried under the attacks of the 5 people in the blink of an eye. On the city wall, Qin Feng sneered and shouted in a deep voice, "Leave him alive. I want to let him know the consequences of going against me." When the other 5 returned to void stage cultivators who had not yet made a move heard this, their brows wrinkled tightly. Obviously, they were very opposed to Qin Feng's method. However, after seeing the tragic scene at the gate of the Black Dragon Empire today and losing face, it was not impossible to leave Longchen hanging on the city wall as a warning. The leader of the Return to Void stage cultivators took a step forward. Just as he was about to speak, his expression changed greatly. Under the attacks of the 5 people, a sword light of thunder and fire shot out. Under everyone's gaze, the sword projection pierced through the chest of one of the Return to Void stage cultivators, instantly breaking the combined attack of the 5 cultivators. Longchen stepped on the Big Dipper and rushed out like a swan. Sword art, Thunder Lotus Annihilation. At the same time, the long sword in Chang Chen's hand leaped with thunder and fire. Streaks of spiritual light gathered in the sky from all directions. He waved the long sword in his hand, causing the wind and clouds to change color. Thunder rumbled in the sky. Lotus flowers made of thunder and fire danced on the blade of his sword, gradually drifting down like fallen leaves. Everyone was mesmerized by this beautiful scene, but the 5 Return to Void stage powerhouses subconsciously retreated, their faces filled with fear and shock. Boom! Boom! Countless lotus sword shadows landed on the ground, and the entire ground shook. Streaks of azure flames floated in the air. The charred smell of the 5 corpses seemed to have spread to the tip of the noses of countless people in the imperial capital. Everyone saw the 5 Return to Void stage powerhouses covered in flames, screaming miserably, and finally falling to the ground and dying in front of everyone's eyes. Amidst the thunder and fire, Longchen's body was still bathed in golden dragon essence, and there were 3 visible wounds on his body. Golden blood flowed out on his dragon scales, making him look like a god. No one dared to look directly at him. How is this possible? You defeated 5 Return to Void stage powerhouses by yourself. Qin Feng cried out involuntarily. The remaining 5 Return to Void stage powerhouses looked at each other, and for a moment, they had no intention of stepping forward. The leader stared at Longchen and cried out involuntarily, This is an Emperor stage martial skill. You have an Emperor stage martial skill, and it has reached the transformation stage. As soon as this person said this, countless people in the imperial capital gasped and cried out in surprise. Emperor stage martial skill? How is it possible? How can he have an Emperor stage martial skill? And it has reached the transformation stage? How old is he? This person is a genius. Even if he has the opportunity to obtain an Emperor stage martial skill, who can reach the transformation stage at his age? If this person enters the 5 great sects in the name of our Black Dragon Empire, our Black Dragon Empire will obtain countless resources. For a moment, discussions rose one after another. Longchen's battle prowess had shocked the entire Black Dragon Empire. Longchen's figure walked step by step toward the top of the city wall, where Qin Feng was. His eyes were like knives as he stared at the remaining 5 Return to Void stage powerhouses and said coldly, Do you still want to fight? The 5 Return to Void stage powerhouses suddenly trembled. Longchen's attack just now made each of them feel an unprecedented sense of danger. They knew that even if they continued to fight and defeated Longchen in the end, their Black Dragon Empire's foundation would be destroyed. An empire without a Return to Void stage powerhouse was destined to decline. Seeing Longchen slowly walking toward them, the 5 of them did not move. At the same time, Qinlai finally stood up from below. His face was also somewhat pale. Although Qin Qing chose Qin Feng because of his relationship with Qin Yunzi, Qinlai was still his son. Qinlai's death inevitably made him somewhat sad. However, he did not have the slightest bit of hatred toward Longchen. Because he knew that if it were not for Longchen, the one who would have died today would definitely be him. The 5 of you are all elders of my grandfather's generation. Today, Qinlai earnestly asks that you do not make an enemy out of Longchen. If all of you die, the Black Dragon Empire will definitely be unable to recover from this setback. If Qin Feng was a wise ruler, I, Qinlai, would definitely not dare to have the slightest intention of betraying the empire. However, this person's personality is perverse and extremely ruthless. Just to stop me and Longchen, he slaughtered an entire town and even had the intention of slaughtering the entire city. Today, if my uncles stubbornly defend me, even if I win, the Black Dragon Empire will be destroyed in the future. If I lose, when Longchen leaves, without your protection, I will not be able to turn the tide with my own strength. Qin Huai's every word came from the bottom of his heart. Hearing this, the 5 people's eyes trembled slightly. On top of the city wall, Qin Feng's face was already as black as the bottom of a pot when he heard this. He shouted in a cold voice, "I am now the ruler of the Black Dragon Empire. The 5 of you, quickly kill Qin Huai and that Longchen." However, after he finished speaking, not a single person around him moved. Longchen slowly walked forward. When he passed by the 5 returned to Void Realm experts, he said indifferently, "What I seek is the great Tao and not the land of an empire. Today, if Qin Huai becomes the ruler of the empire, everything will be over." The 5 people stared fixedly at Longchen. Then, they looked at Qin Huai and the thousands of people left behind after the city wall was destroyed. In the end, they slowly retreated. Although they had always been hiding in the shadows, they were still very clear about many things that happened in the imperial capital. They also knew the character of Qin Huai and Qin Feng better than anyone else. Chapter 179. I've repaid your kindness. The Black Dragon Empire's capital. Outside the city walls, there were tens of thousands of corpses. A gust of wind blew past, bringing with it a nauseating smell of blood. Above the city walls, Qin Feng's face was twisted. He rushed to the front of the 5 returned to Void Stage demon-masked figures and grabbed one of them by the collar. He yelled crazily, "I am the Emperor of the Black Dragon Empire. Kill this person, them, and everyone else here today." Qin Feng was in a state of madness. He couldn't believe that the 5 of them would choose to stop. Longchen, a soul transformation stage cultivator, actually defeated 5 returned to Void Stage cultivators by himself. The 5 of them looked at Qin Feng. They shook their heads and sighed. With a slight movement of their divine senses, they forcibly pushed him away. Then, the 5 of them said to Longchen in a deep voice, "Remember what you said today. If you want to touch the Black Dragon Empire, the 5 of us will fight you to the death even if we have to give up our lives." After the 5 of them finished speaking, they looked deeply at Qin Huai. Then, their figures moved and flew away, disappearing into the darkness. Qin Feng staggered back dozens of steps and stood at the edge of the city walls. Looking down at the tens of thousands of people who died under the heavy crossbows, he suddenly laughed loudly. Looking at Longchen and Qin Huai, he said in a hoarse voice, "I have lost this battle. But so what? Soon, you will come back to accompany me. That old bastard Qin Yunzi will definitely not let you go." Saying this, Qin Feng actually flipped over and fell down the city walls. "I refuse to accept this." A violent sound rang out. Qin Feng died just like that. He didn't know why he lost at the moment of his death. Originally, when he became Qin Yunzi's disciple, he felt that the position of Emperor of the Black Dragon Empire was his. But then, a small character from the 3 Cities tournament in Iron Mountain City turned the situation around step by himself. Longchen watched as Qin Feng died. The spiritual energy around his body receded like a receding tide. His hair slowly turned white, and his face was as pale as a sheet of paper. Lu Tsangwan swiftly charged over when he saw this scene. He supported Longchen before placing his hands on Longchen's arms. He cried out involuntarily, What secret technique did you use to actually cause you to lose almost 30% of your vitality?" Longchen shook his head without saying a word. Lu Tsangwan saw that he didn't say anything, so he stomped his foot and wanted to bring him back to the Pill Pagoda immediately. However, after taking a few steps, Longchen suddenly stopped and looked at Qin Huai from afar. Qin Huai also stared at Longchen. In the end, he bowed deeply and said in a deep voice, "Qin Huai will never forget Mister's kindness." As long as the Black Dragon Empire exists, the Long family of Iron Mountain City will never fall. Longchen dragged his weak body and turned around. He didn't accept Qin Huai's bow. His breathing was weak as he stared at Qin Huai and said slowly, "I have repaid your kindness. Karma goes back and forth. You and I no longer owe each other anything. You don't have to do this." After saying these words, Longchen followed Lu Xanlan and headed toward the Pill Pagoda. Countless Pill Pagoda elders followed closely behind, ready for battle. Yanli and Lui's faces were filled with worry. Qin Lai stood in place blankly. He still didn't know what kind of kindness he had done Longchen to make him an enemy of the entire Black Dragon Empire. He didn't even hesitate to make an enemy of the Divine Blade Sect's elder Yanzi. Qin Lai laughed bitterly and took a deep breath. He knew that he was now the true monarch of the Black Dragon Empire. Because of Longchen's existence, men passed down the order. From today onwards, Iron Mountain Village's Long family will be conferred as a royal family with a different surname. Generations of meritorious service, they can establish a private army of 100,000. They will be allocated according to the royal family's resource allocation method. Pass down the order. The Empire's army is to be ready for battle. Guard against other countries taking advantage of the situation. Pass down the order. Lock down the entire Imperial City. Qin Lai displayed unprecedented boldness as he passed down the orders one after another. On the other side, inside the Pill Pagoda. Under Longchen's orders, Lu Xanlan began to collect all kinds of spirit herbs. Longchen had paid a great price to be able to obtain a complete victory against 5 great Origin Return Realm experts. After Longchen consumed the elixir, he immediately went into seclusion to heal his injuries. With the help of the Pill Pagoda, healing elixirs were continuously sent into the secret room. In just 3 days, Longchen discovered another shocking fact. That was his body's recovery ability. The wound on his chest that was so deep that his bones could be seen had actually disappeared without a trace. At this moment, he discovered that the dragon essence in his Sea of Qi had an almost terrifying recovery ability. However, when Longchen sensed the dragon essence in his dantian, he knew that this represented something else. The dragon essence could far surpass the spirit energy contained in an ordinary person's Sea of Qi. However, if he wanted to condense a golden core, he would need an even more boundless spirit energy to support it. Although the Sea of Qi of 100,000 miles gave him an almost invincible strength in the soul transformation realm, it also increased the difficulty of condensing the dragon essence by countless times. Right now, relying solely on the resources given by the 5 great sects is not enough to allow me to continue improving my strength. If I want to break through again, I must join the 5 great sects. Longchen muttered to himself. The 9 great empires had very little resources. The main sources were basically given by the 5 great sections. Longchen only had a Sea of Qi of 100,000 miles. If he wanted to break through, he was afraid that even if he seized all the resources of the 9 great empires, it would take him 3 years or even longer to step into the Origin Return realm. Longchen smiled bitterly and shook his head. After recuperating for a few days, he left the secret room. At this moment, although he looked fine on the surface, his strength was actually less than a third of his original strength. Especially after using that secret technique, he had lost his vitality. He could only wait for Lu Xanlan to find specific spirit herbs and use them to recover. However, when he came out of seclusion, more and more alchemists in the Pill Pagoda came to consult him in an endless stream. In particular, many nobles of the Black Dragon Empire came one after another. The number of spirit herbs that were delivered to him every day was innumerable. Longchen did not avoid them and accepted them one by one. This action made the 5 Origin Return Realm experts of the Black Dragon Empire feel a lot more at ease. On the other side, the news of the replacement of the Black Dragon Empire's monarch had also spread among the 9 great empires. Even the deaths of people in the Black Dragon Empire were known to everyone. On one hand, he blocked the news, and on the other hand, he spread many different versions of rumors so that the various countries did not have a clear understanding of what had happened that day. Therefore, after a short period of restlessness, the various countries all regained their calm. The armies at the borders of the Black Dragon Empire also gradually returned to their normal state. Originally, the replacement of a monarch was enough to make the various countries move. However, the immoral path was about to open, and the envoys of the 5 great sects were about to arrive. This made this matter seem less important than imagined. Chapter 180. the heart of a father in the Black Dragon Empire. After Qin Feng's death, Qin Lai ascended to the throne 20 days later. Longchen did not attend his ascension ceremony. These days, Longchen stayed in the Pill Pagoda and guided many alchemists with his alchemy inheritance. Only when he successfully refined the life-restoring pill did he have the thought of leaving the Pill Pagoda. The news of the opening of the path of immortal ascension had spread. In 15 days, the younger generation of the 9 great empires would gather at the 10,000 feet mountain to ascend the path of immortal ascension. The envoys of the 5 great sects would also arrive at that moment. This was also the reason why the major empires were so calm. Many of the younger generation chose to go into seclusion to make the final push. The major empires also used all their resources to help their younger generation. Longchen found Qin Lai at midnight and offered him a bottle of sake to congratulate him on ascending to the throne. Although it was not over yet, they were still friends. The sake was finished. Longchen asked for the fastest flying beast in the Black Dragon Empire and took off. In these 15 days, he planned to return to Iron Mountain Village to take a look. He knew that once he passed the path of immortal ascension and entered the 5 great sects, as long as he had enough resources, he would be able to rush out of this area within a year and find Qin Xian in the ancient desolate land. Of course, compared to the 5 great sects, the ancient desolate land was filled with ancient clans. They were all bloodline clans. There were also many opportunities. In his previous life, Longchen could be said to have soared to the heavens in the ancient desolate land. In all of this, he didn't know how long it would take. He wanted to see his parents, whom he missed dearly in his previous life, before he left. In order to increase the flying speed, Longchen set up a few acceleration arrays on the flying beast. The originally long journey only took 4 days to reach Iron Mountain City. Following the familiar streets, Longchen slowly walked towards the Long family. Have you heard? The news from the imperial capital said that the Long family has been conferred the title of a royal family. They will be given royal resources for generations. Not only that, but you can also set up a private army. Right now, more than 10 cities in the surrounding area have come to offer their services one after another. They want to win a good impression. I really don't know what's going on. Ever since the Long family won first place in the grand competition of the 3 cities, they've been thriving. I didn't expect them to soar so high. You don't know about this, right? Half a month ago, one of my relatives in the imperial capital said that Longchen seemed to have entered the top 3 of the heavenly rankings. That's the ranking of the younger generation of the 9 great empires. Along the way, Longchen heard a lot of discussions. Although Iron Mountain Village was remote, but there were still many channels to hear bits and pieces of information. As they got closer and closer to the Long family's mansion, the wide streets were completely jammed. There were horses in front and behind of them, carrying them through many alleys towards the Long family. Longchen's body was like a swimming dragon as he passed through the crowd. Get out of the way, get out of the way. The Duke's carriage should go first. Following a shout behind him, the people on the street all cried out in alarm. No one thought that even the Duke, who was in charge of dozens of cities in the northwest region, would come specially. Longchen moved slightly to the side, leaving a path, and continued to walk towards the Long family's mansion. However, before he could take a few steps, he was stopped by a person who rushed out from behind him. This person shouted at Longchen, "Wait on the side, wait for the Duke to go first." Longchen frowned slightly. Looking at the huge street, he said indifferently, "It doesn't matter if 3 or 5 more people pass through. Why do you have to do this?" The middle-aged man's face immediately darkened. Just as he was about to speak, he heard a deep voice behind him, "We're about to reach the Long family's mansion. Let's go in first and talk. Don't cause any more trouble." The manager glared fiercely at Longchen, then left with a flick of his sleeve. Longchen didn't care. He just smiled and continued to walk towards the Long family's mansion. Longchen walked straight into the Long family's mansion. However, the Long family's mansion was already crowded with people. Every Long family's disciple was surrounded by people who came to visit. Regardless of whether it was a high-ranking official or a big family, the younger generation, or even the older generation, They were all very polite. Even a Long family's sweeper was pulled to the side. This scene made Long Chen laugh involuntarily. He turned around and walked towards the Long family's inner courtyard, sticking close to the wall. As Long Chen walked past, the Duke's sedan stopped at the entrance of the Long family's mansion. A middle-aged man of about 40 or 50 years old walked down and stepped into the Long family's mansion in front of everyone's eyes. This is the Duke, hurry up and get out of the way. I didn't expect that even the Duke would come. The Long family's status in the Northwest region will reach an unprecedented height. That Long Chen of the Long family is really the ancestor of the Long family. The surrounding people were discussing animatedly. The Long family's disciples were all shocked when they heard the Duke's name. They all blushed and hurriedly informed the Long family's elders to come over. Soon, the Long family's elders hurriedly rushed over to welcome the Duke and walked straight into the inner courtyard. The Duke was very polite. He pulled a few Long family's elders aside and asked about their well-being. He also casually took out many pills and gave them to everyone. Long Tianqing quickly brought many core elders to welcome the Duke. However, his footsteps suddenly stopped as if he felt something. His eyes were fixed on the crowd. In the crowd, Long Chen's footsteps also stopped abruptly. In the crowded Long family's courtyard, the two of them actually saw each other at the same time. Long Tianqing's hair was tied up, and his temples were as flat as blades. However, there were two strands of white hair. His eyes suddenly turned red. He pushed the people in front of him away and rushed towards Long Chen. At this moment, Long Chen didn't know why his heart suddenly softened. The moment he saw his father rushing towards him, he only felt waves of hot liquid rushing to the corners of his eyes. Under everyone's gaze, Long Tianqing hugged Long Chen tightly in his arms. His voice trembled slightly. "Is it you, son? You're really back?" Long Chen had only left Iron Mountain City for about half a year. During this period, Long Tianqing had been worried every day. During the grand competition of the three cities, Long Chen killed Xia Changfeng and became the first prince's enemy. This made him feel uneasy. For many days and nights, he saw Long Chen covered in blood in his dreams and woke up in the middle of the night. "Father, I'm back." Long Chen's eyes were red and his voice was choked with sobs. When the surrounding people saw this scene, they immediately burst into an uproar. "Is this the young man from the Long family? The famous Long Chen who walked out of the grand competition of the three cities? Not only that, I heard that in the Deqian Empire, he consecutively killed more than 10 people on the heaven roll. He rushed to the third place in the heaven roll and forced the second place on the heaven roll, Jianshi San, to retreat with one sword. According to rumors, it seems that even the current emperor's ascension to the throne had a lot to do with him. Countless people rushed forward dauntlessly, as if they wanted to see what the number one genius of the Black Dragon Empire looked like. Chapter 181. Surprised. Many people looked at Long Chen from afar and were in awe of him. Under everyone's gaze, Long Chen and Long Tianqing walked towards the inner courtyard. Many Long family disciples followed closely behind. Long Chen and Long Tianqing had just sat down when a Long family elder asked awkwardly, "Master, young master, the Northwest regional prince is still waiting outside. Should we bring them in?" Long Tianqing finally understood. He secretly thought that he had been overjoyed to see Long Chen and quickly got up to welcome him. "Father can just sit. There's no harm in letting him wait for a while." Long Chen smiled faintly. The elder was stunned and immediately asked, "Young master, you mean to let them wait outside? That's not appropriate. He's a regional prince after all." Long Chen smiled and replied, "There's nothing inappropriate. Just go and tell him. If he's not willing to wait, he can just go back." That elder was a bit stupefied. Although it was rumored that Long Chen's reputation was great now, and he was even known as the number one expert of the Blue Dragon Empire's younger generation, but that was a duke. He was in charge of dozens of cities. In the entire Blue Dragon Empire, perhaps only the emperor could make him wait at the entrance. Long Tianqing also seemed to feel that it was a little inappropriate. However, when he saw Long Chen waving his hand, he did not say anything else and directly ordered the elder to leave. The elder walked out. When he saw the regional prince, his expression immediately became respectful. He cupped his fists and said, "Regional prince, if you're not here, please drink a few more cups of tea and wait for a while." When these words came out, the surrounding people's expressions became strange. The housekeeper looked around and his face darkened. He said in a deep voice, "There's not even a seat here. How can we drink tea?" "Shut up." At this moment, the regional prince said in a gloomy voice, "We'll just wait here. Elder, please go in and inform young Master Long that he must meet me today." After saying that, the regional prince actually stood at the entrance of the inner courtyard without moving. However, he stood there for an entire day. It was only when the sun set that someone brought him into the inner courtyard. "Give the Duke a seat of honor," an elder from the Long family said hurriedly. The chair arrived, but Duke Qin Kai stood there without any intention of sitting down. Instead, he looked at Long Chen. This scene shocked the housekeeper and the many elders of the Long family. The steward felt his back drenched in cold sweat. In his heart, he wondered who this Long Chen was to be able to make the regional prince act so servile. Today, he followed Qin Kai here. He originally thought that he was only here to meet this royal family member with a different surname. As for Long Chen, although he had heard of him and knew that his strength was not low, wasn't this a bit too much? "Duke, please take a seat. I, Long Tianqing, have neglected you today." Long Tianqing cupped his fists and said. Unexpectedly, Qin Kai still had no intention of sitting down. Instead, it was Long Chen who said indifferently, "My father asked you to sit down, so sit down. If you have something to say, say it quickly." Only then did Qin Kai sit down. However, he still looked very restrained. After Qin Lai's rank, although a lot of information was blocked, as the Northwest Duke, he still received a lot of information. He also knew a little about what happened that day. The young man in front of him was not someone he could provoke. "Mister, it's like this. Now that the Long family is a royal family with a different surname and belongs to the Northwest, it is naturally under my management. This is the list of resources to be distributed in the future," and Qin Kai's attitude was very humble. Long Tianqing and the others were not used to it. He even called Long Chen Mister. After Qin Kai finished speaking, Long Chen waved his hand. "If there is nothing else, you can go back. Just do these things according to the rules." Qin Kai quickly nodded. However, he did not leave. After hesitating for a moment, he said in a deep voice, "Since I met Mr. today, I have something that I would like to ask Mr. for help with. Please save my life." Long Chen frowned slightly, but still asked, "What is it?" Qin Kai's flattery was not a good person. However, he was the Northwest Duke after all. Who would dare to kill him in the Black Dragon Empire? Qin Kai quickly said, "I have already reported this matter to the Imperial capital. Many soul transformation realm experts were transferred here. However, they all died mysteriously. Since I met Mr. today, please save me. After this, I am willing to pay any price. Speak." Long Chen coldly snorted. Qin Kai's mind trembled. He quickly said, "It's like this." Hearing Qin Kai's words, everyone was enraged. Long Tianqing couldn't help but frown and say, "You're saying that a man killed dozens of people in your mansion and kidnapped your concubine in order to steal your wine? Then, he threatened to take your life." Everyone was filled with hatred. Only Long Chen's eyes suddenly narrowed. He frowned and stared at Qin Kai in front of him. After a while, he asked coldly, "You are saying that he has many accomplices, and each of them is extremely proficient in the art of assassination? Moreover, they wore black clothes with star patterns on them." Qin Kai heard this and nodded repeatedly. Long Chen slammed the table and stood up. The aura around him dissipated. Qin Kai was directly thrown out and heavily hit the wall. Long Tianqing and the surrounding elders of the Long family also stared at Long Chen. At that moment, they felt an unprecedented sense of danger from Long Chen. The Long Chen in front of them was no longer the young master of the Long family in Iron Mountain Village. "Speak the truth. Otherwise, even if you are the Duke, I will take your life today. Long Chen's cold voice caused everyone's heart to tremble. Only now did the housekeeper know why Qin Kai was so respectful to Long Chen. He had been with the Duke for many years. Although the Duke was lazy, his cultivation was still at the peak of the early soul transformation realm. However, in front of Long Chen, he could not even withstand a single breath. There was blood at the corner of Qin Kai's mouth. His face was extremely pale. He stood up from the wall. Feeling the killing intent from Long Chen, he was extremely frightened and did not dare to hide anything. It turned out that Qin Kai was also a wine lover. Because of a bottle of ancestral wine that had been passed down for thousands of years, he tore down a winery and took the winery owner's daughter back to the Duke's mansion. This was originally not a big deal for him. However, he did not expect that when he was drinking and having fun that night, a man would rush into the mansion and save the woman. Moreover, the man also took away the bottle of thousand-year-old wine. As the Duke, Qin Kai naturally sent people to chase after the man. However, he did not expect that he would encounter many assassins in black clothes with star patterns. None of the people he sent out survived. After hearing this, Long Chen gradually revealed a smile. He stared at Qin Kai and said, "Does the man you mentioned have a bottle of black star wine on his waist? This person is also wearing white clothes and has an overwhelming righteous aura." "Yes, yes. The wine bottle on his waist is extremely eye-catching." "Sir, do you know this person?" "Yes, sir, please save me." Qin Kai hurriedly shouted. "You stay in the Long family. If you want to live, wait for me to leave and go to the road of immortal ascension with me." Long Chen's face revealed a bit of expectation. Chapter 182. Yi Xing drank hard with Qin Kai's help. Long Tianxing dismissed all the guests who came to give him gifts and stayed by Long Chen's side. "Chener, where's Qin Xian? Why didn't she come back with you?" Long Tianxing couldn't help but ask. Long Chen's mother held Long Chen's hand and said, "Chener, although your cultivation is strong now, you can't stray from your heart. Qin Xian is a good girl." Long Chen laughed bitterly and explained, "You're worrying too much. Qin Xian is fine. She just had some other matters to attend to and didn't come back with me." Long Chen didn't tell his parents about Qin Xian's return to the ancient desolate lands so that they wouldn't be troubled. Long Tianxing didn't have any intention of asking further. The three of them started to eat, and laughter could be heard from time to time. The family of three was happy and harmonious. This ordinary life didn't make Long Chen feel bored. Instead, it made him feel more relaxed than ever. However, he knew that he had to leave in the end. 5 days passed in a flash. Long Chen was about to embark on his journey again. Although he had been reborn, the hatred from his previous life was deeply rooted in his heart. Just like how he had to repay Qin Lai's kindness in his previous life, he had to settle it. In fact, Long Chen knew that even if he gave up everything and didn't pursue the martial path, he wouldn't be able to live a peaceful life. This was because he understood his hypocritical master too well. The so-called master who had transcended was actually a very stubborn person. If he wanted to become a great emperor, the only way was through the primal chaos golden codex. In his previous life, it was because of this that he found Long Chen, who had the body of a great emperor. In this life, Long Chen definitely wouldn't sit still and wait for death. He wanted to settle all the grudges from his previous life in this life. Long Chen stepped onto the flying beast and took Duke Qin Kai with him as he left. Behind him, Long Tianxing rode on the ground for several hours and followed closely behind. However, he slowly watched Long Chen's figure disappear into the horizon. Long Chen did not turn back. He knew that if he did, he would not be able to stop himself from stopping. However, he had to leave. Only by resolving all of this could he truly be at ease. This time, he had brought back many spiritual herbs from the Pill Tower and left them all to Long Tianxing. In addition to the cultivation techniques he had left behind, it was enough for the Long family to prosper. With Qin Kai in tow, Long Chen slowed down as they passed through the county town. He was waiting for someone, waiting for an old friend from his previous life. The ruler of the night, Ao Tsungqiong. Along the way, Qin Kai explained everything clearly. As the Northwest Commandery Prince, although he often used his subordinates to do some shady business, he never killed anyone. Compared to the other nobles, he was nothing. As for these things, Longchen was too lazy to care about them. However, he knew that someone would take care of it. Someone would definitely take care of it. That person was Ascension, his only sworn brother in his previous life. He respected him like a father. Although Longchen and Qin Kai were sitting on the flying beast, their speed was not fast. Soon, Longchen's face revealed a smile. Because the person he was waiting for had arrived. It was a simple white robe without the slightest pattern. It was plain white yet magnanimous. The wine pot at his waist contrasted with it, making it seem rather dazzling. His eyebrows were like distant mountains, heavy but not messy. His eyes were not big but abnormally bright. It was as if there was nothing he could not look straight at. If we are brothers, even if I turn into a demon, so what? However, in this life, there is still a wine that I have not tasted. In his previous life, Ascension destroyed his Dao heart and turned into a demon for Longchen. He fought 10 heaven domain experts and finally died with a smile. His life was magnanimous. Northwest Regional King, do you know your crime? Before Ascension arrived, his voice was like rolling thunder. Hearing this familiar voice, Longchen revealed a smile. His right hand flashed and he directly pushed Qin Kai down from the flying beast. Longchen's push caused Qin Kai to be stunned. His body quickly fell from the sky. No, no! I don't want to die, save me! Qin Kai screamed with all his might. However, Longchen didn't react in the slightest. Ascension, on the other hand, moved. He stepped on his flying demonic beast and flew over, grabbing Qin Kai. He gave Longchen a deep look before descending. The smile on Longchen's face grew even wider. He followed closely behind and descended. When the three of them stood on the ground, Qin Kai was so scared that he couldn't speak. Although he was in the soul transformation realm, he didn't know why he couldn't even think of resisting in front of the two people in front of him. Ascension frowned and asked Longchen in a deep voice, "Why did you push him off the beast? Do you have a grudge with him?" Longchen smiled, "No grudge." Ascension asked again, "Then you did it to punish evil and promote good?" Longchen's smile did not fade. "Although I am not a bad person, I am not a completely good person. Not at all." Ascension looked at Longchen and frowned, "Then why did you kill him?" "Because I knew you would save him." Longchen replied. Ascension's expression froze, and then he asked again with interest, "Then how did you know I would save him?" "Because he did not deserve to die, so you would not leave him in the lurch. Am I right?" Longchen smiled. Ascension looked at Longchen. The simple conversation made him very interested in Longchen. He had never met Longchen before, but Longchen seemed to know him quite well. "Qin Kai, you should leave. From today onwards, do good deeds every day. I will personally tell Qin Lai that if you do anything evil again, your life will be in danger." Longchen waved his hand, indicating for Qin Kai to leave. In reality, Longchen did not care about the matter of Qin Kai. However, he knew that if he did not deal with Qin Kai, Ascension's mind would be on dealing with him. Longchen knew that his way of dealing with the situation was just right. After all, he knew the young master of Dark Star too well. As expected, seeing Qin Kai nod his head, Ascension let go of his right hand and said, "This punishment can be considered fair. However, if I find out that you did not follow my orders, I will personally come back to take your life after the path of a moral ascension." How could Qin Kai dare to say no now? At this moment, he did not want to stay here for even a second longer. He rolled and crawled away. Seeing that the matter was settled, Qin Kai looked deeply at Longchen. He did not say anything else and turned around to leave on his flying demon beast. Longchen followed closely behind with a smile on his face. They walked side by side. "Why are you following me?" Ascension's tone was somewhat unfriendly. Longchen stared at him and said, "You and I are going the same way. We are both going to the path of immortal ascension. I have a jug of wine that I want to drink with you. You and I have never met before. Why do you want to drink with me? If you want to, then do it. If you don't want to drink, then forget it. If someone offers to drink, I will definitely not refuse." Chapter 183. Path of Immortality. The path of immortal ascension was the only way for the younger generation of the 9 great empires to enter the 5 great sects. It was also closely related to the future development of the various empires. Along the way, Ascension was amazed by Longchen, and the two of them drank to their heart's content every day. Longchen's understanding of the art of drinking coincided with his. Not only that, but he also mentioned the art of brewing wine, which made him even more interested. "Brother Longchen, may I know which sect you are going to visit on your journey to the Immortal Ascension Road?" Ascension asked. Longchen was silent for a moment, but he could not help but think. In his previous life, he had joined the Wanjian sect and learned the way of the sword. But now, his way of the sword was unparalleled. What reason did he have to join the Wanjian sect again? However, if he joined other sects, there would be no redeeming qualities. After all, his ultimate goal in joining the 5 great sects was to obtain resources so that he could recover his previous life's cultivation as quickly as possible. A moment later, Longchen said, "I want to enter the 100 Smelting clan." The 100 Smelting sect was one of the 5 major sects. Its core was mainly the refinement of charms, pills, and spell formations. However, it could only be regarded as the weakest among the 5 major sects in terms of status. However, in terms of wealth, the 100 Smelting clan was definitely ranked first. Hearing Longchen's words, Ascension frowned slightly and said in a deep voice, "From what I've observed, Brother Longchen, your words and actions are extraordinary, and your cultivation is even more extraordinary. Why did you choose to go to a place like the 100 Smelting clan? You must know that only when you are strong yourself can you be truly strong." Longchen shook his head. He did not answer, nor did he intend to explain. Seeing Longchen's attitude, Ascension didn't say anything else and followed the two of them. After passing through the 9 Dragon Vein Mountains, the two of them got off their flying mounts at the same time. Behind 9 Dragons Mountain, Road of Immortal Ascension. After this path, one could not ride a mount and could only enter on foot. According to his calculations, tomorrow would be the day when the path of immortal ascension would open. Today, everyone should have arrived. The path of immortal ascension is fraught with danger. Why don't we travel together and support each other? Longchen suggested. Ascension paused and frowned. After a moment of hesitation, he shook his head and moved away. Longchen shook his head and laughed. Although the short drinking session made Ascension have a good impression of him, it was far from the point of complete trust. However, Longchen wasn't in a hurry. In his previous life, the two of them had met on the path of immortality. After that, they had experienced many things and became sworn brothers when they entered the 5 major sects. After passing through the 9 Dragon Mountain, Longchen had only walked for tens of thousands of meters before he saw 5 towering mountains. Between the mountains was a stone staircase that could allow thousands of people to pass through at the same time. At this moment, there were already many people walking up the stone staircase. Longchen gazed into the distance and saw that there were envoys from the 5 major sects on top of the 5 mountain peaks. If someone performed well on the path of immortal ascension, or if they were suitable for the cultivation method of the 5 major sects, they would be accepted regardless of whether they passed the path of immortal ascension or not. Less than 10 meters below the top of the 5 mountain peaks, there were 9 circular platforms. These platforms were already packed with people. These people were the people of the 9 great empires with high status. On the top of the Godly Knife sect's peak, there were several arrogant young men in their late 20s. In front of them was the sect's elder. The elder wore a dark red robe with a long knife pattern revolving around it. This person stared at the disciples of the various countries who were gradually walking up the path of immortal ascension and said in a deep voice, "Senior brother Qing Yinzi's 2 disciples were killed. The 2 people he personally assigned also died an unnatural death. He specifically ordered that no one from the Black Dragon Empire can walk out of the path of immortal ascension today. The elder's expression was gloomy. The young men behind him immediately cupped their fists in response. One of the youths even took a step forward and said in a deep voice, "These past few days, Disciple has already inquired. The reason why so much turmoil has occurred in the Azure Dragon Empire, 70% of it is because of a youth called Longchen. This person came from the northwest metro mountain city." Then, he displayed an extremely powerful sword cultivation. His battle prowess is extremely strong. Currently, he is ranked 3rd on the heavenly ranking. The words of the young man caused the elder to frown slightly. Soon after, he said, "This time, we won't be the only ones to act." The monstrous disciple of the Tongbai sect, Ho Kong, was personally promoted by Qing Yunzi. It is said that he has also specially sent people to deal with this matter. It is best that we kill this so-called Longchen before he does. Of course, it is not only this guy called Longchen. You guys think of a way to make the people from the other countries kill as many people from the Black Dragon Empire as possible. Then, you guys can directly enter the 5 major sects. If this matter can be completed smoothly, we will obtain many benefits. This scene happened almost at the same time on another mountain peak. This mountain peak was where the Tongbai sect was located. In a short period of time, 2 of the 5 major sects actually chose to target the Black Dragon Empire because of the pressure of their monstrous disciples. At this moment, Longchen still walked to the end of the stairs. At the end of the stairs was a huge platform where the disciples of various countries were gathered. At noon, a white-haired old man jumped down from the Wanjian sect in the middle and landed in front of everyone. The surrounding people could not help but retreat when they saw the aura around him. Longchen scanned with his divine sense. This person was an expert at the late stage of void return. However, Longchen knew that in the Wanjian sect, the late stage of void return was merely an outer sect elder. The true core elders were almost all half-step to Dao integration or even Dao integration. This was also the reason why the Wanjian sect was the head of the 5 major sects. Report the names of the disciples of various countries. Those whose names have been confirmed can directly wait for the road of immortal ascension to open. The others who are on the list must be checked and tested, the old man from the Wanjian sect said in a deep voice. His voice was not loud, but the people around him heard it clearly. As soon as he finished speaking, many people came out from the crowd. Ao Tsungcheong was among them. These people's cultivation was not bad, but they were not from the 9 great empires. Perhaps they were from the 9 great empires but did not obtain a place to enter the road of immortal ascension. These people had to go through another round of tests. On the one hand, they had to verify their identity. On the other hand, they had to test whether they were qualified to enter the road of immortal ascension. Of course, these tests were very strict. Almost 90% of the people were eliminated. Therefore, many people were envious of Longchen and other people who had obtained a place to enter the road of immortal ascension. After seeing Longchen, the other people from the Black Dragon Empire who had obtained a place to enter the road of immortal ascension all approached him with reverence. Many people with unknown identities were directly expelled from the mountain. Some people who had not reached the middle stage of soul transformation were also eliminated. After a long while, the entrance to the road of immortal ascension slowly opened. The so-called road of immortal ascension was actually the road to the 5 major sects. However, the 5 major sects had set up many tasks on this road. Chapter 184. An uneven road. On both sides were towering stone platforms. Behind the stone platforms were 5 endless paths that led straight to the sky. They slowly separated. The main road leads to the heavens, and one can ascend to immortality. At the end of the path of immortal ascension was the 5 great sects. As the test was over, the elders of the 5 major sects landed and removed the ceiling formation on the stone platform with a wave of their hands. The 5 paths lead to the final side training grounds of the 5 major sections. Everyone must try their best to obtain the stone key in the secret cave. Otherwise, even if you reach the end, you will not be able to enter the 5 major sections. The 5 great sects are recruiting a total of 200 disciples on this path of immortal ascension. Everyone, let's go. After the elders casually explained the rules, everyone impatiently walked to the main road behind the stone platform. Longchen was followed by dozens of people from the Black Dragon Empire. Just as they walked past the stone platform and entered the road of immortal ascension, the elders of the Godly Knife Gate and the Tongbai Gate gave them a deep look and sneered. After the crowd had left, the elders and disciples of the 5 great sects also walked into the path of immortality. Then, they disappeared into the forest on both sides. The elder of the Godly Saber sect stared at the backs of Long Chen's group from afar and said to the few youths beside him, "Go and tell everyone to kill as many disciples of the Black Dragon Empire as possible. Anyone who can take down Long Chen's head will have 3 qualifications to enter our Godly Saber sect." The young man nodded and didn't seem to care. He replied, "There's no need for that. Once we enter the depths of the road of immortality, we can easily find 1 or 2 people and kill them without anyone noticing." The elder shook his head and said, "There are other elders and disciples from the other 3 sects observing the path of immortal ascension. Unless it is absolutely necessary, don't make a move. Even if you want to make a move, it is best to wait until the second half of the path of immortal ascension." After crossing the path of immortality for 10,000 meters, the mountain path beneath their feet gradually disappeared and was replaced by a wilderness of woods. Layers of undulating mountain ranges also gradually appeared. "Mr. Longchen, these 5 paths lead to different sects, and each sect has different test missions according to their characteristics. Which sect do you intend to go to?" The Black Dragon Empire's disciple asked after Long Chen. Needless to say, Mr. Long Chen's swordsmanship is superb, so he must be from the Wanjian sect. Moreover, the Wanjian sect is the head of the 5 major sects, so it is naturally the best place to go. Everyone nodded. Only Long Chen shook his head and said, "My goal is the 100 Smelting Clan. If you are willing to follow me, I will naturally take care of you. Of course, if you have other choices, I will not stop you." 100 Smelting Clan? Long Chen's words caused many of the Black Dragon Empire's disciples to be stunned. Among them, a few of those with higher cultivations revealed puzzled expressions. The 100 Smelting Clan was ranked at the bottom of the 5 major sects. Of course, if that was all there was to it, it would be fine. However, the core of the 100 Smelting Clan was the place where the 5 major sects refined talismans, refined pills, and so on. In their eyes, it was the last place to go. Among them, a few people with higher cultivations looked at each other. In the end, they chose to cup their fists in front of Long Chen and walk in the direction of the Wanjian sect. Some of them walked in the direction of the 3 major sections. Only a small number of people with lower cultivations chose to stay behind Long Chen. Long Chen slightly shook his head. These people's choice of the Wanjian sect was understandable. However, he was afraid that among them, only 2 or 3 people could pass the immortal path and enter the Wanjian sect. Long Chen had walked the immortal path in his previous life, so he was very familiar with it. The most difficult part of the immortal path was the second half of the journey. In the first half of the journey, everyone was walking in the same direction. Moreover, everyone was walking in groups. Their goal was to find the secret cave and seize the task item, the stone key. However, in the second half of the journey, everyone would be separated. People of different paths would start to fight openly and covertly for the quota of sections. They would even start to fight. As for the last part of the journey, it was incomparably tragic. Everyone would meet again. Because of the number of task items, a chaotic battle would break out. That battle was the most frightening part of the entire immortal path. "Mr. Long Chen, our cultivations are not high. The requirements of the 100 Smelting sect are also relatively low. We are willing to follow you. Please take care of us." The remaining people respectfully said to Long Chen. Long Chen nodded and motioned for everyone to continue forward. Pay attention to finding the secret cave. Although there are demonic beasts guarding the secret cave, there are also stone keys. The path we are walking in is slightly closer to the 100 smelting sect. There should be talismans, pills, and the like. It will be very beneficial for the later battles. As everyone went deeper into the mountain range, the surroundings gradually became less spacious. Everyone could only determine the general direction and continue forward. There are demonic beasts' feces in front of us. As long as we follow it, there will definitely be a secret cave. One of the youths was quite thoughtful. He quickly found traces of the secret cave. Longchen nodded and everyone followed him. Sure enough, not long after, they saw a medium-sized stone mountain. There was a dark cave near the stone mountain. Waves of foul odor came from the cave. Occasionally, low growls could be heard. Longchen was just about to speak when he spread out his divine sense. His brows furrowed and his face gradually became gloomy. He saw that there were two groups of people rapidly approaching them from the north and the south. These people all had ruthless expressions and the corners of their mouths curled up. They definitely did not come for the demonic beasts here. Someone can't help but make a move so quickly. Longchen muttered to himself. He knew Qin Yunzi's strength in the 5 great sections. Qin Feng's death would definitely bring countless disasters to the Black Dragon Empire. Moreover, Qin Yunzi had once said that as long as Qin Feng did not become the emperor of the Black Dragon Empire, he would return to being the one who would not be able to pass the path of immortality in the Black Dragon Empire. It seemed that these words were true. Longchen sneered. In his previous life, he had suffered many losses at the hands of Qin Yunzi. It seemed that in this life, it would be the same. Don't act rashly. We have guests coming. Longchen said indifferently. Everyone was bewildered, but they were still vigilant. In less than 10 breaths, nearly 20 people came from the north and south. Is there anyone called Longchen among you? The leader on the left stared at Longchen and the others and asked coldly. The people on the other side were also eyeing covetously. They seemed to be ready to attack at any time. Longchen's expression did not change. He said indifferently, I am Longchen. Do you have any advice for me? When they heard this, their eyes suddenly lit up. They smiled and said, it seems that we are lucky. Rumor has it that you have the cultivation of the 3rd on the heaven list. Today, we want to see if it is true or not. What 3rd place on the heaven ranking? I think it's just an undeserved reputation. More than 10 people from the Great Qian Empire were killed in a single day. How strong can the heaven ranking be? The person behind him sneered. Chapter 185. Weapon fusing stone. After entering the road of immortal ascension, the various countries began to search for the secret cave. They tried their best to collect the stone keys and other items in the secret cave. However, a piece of news gradually spread on the road of immortal ascension. It was that Qin Yunzi wanted no one from the Black Dragon Empire to enter the 5 great sects, and those who killed Longchen would receive 3 spots to enter the Godly Knife sect. This huge temptation caused many people to start approaching the people from the Blue Dragon Empire. The team that had their eyes on Longchen did not know that the two were now facing each other. However, when the mournful cries rang out, the first battle on the road of immortal ascension had already begun. At a stone mountain that was neither too big nor too small, a demonic beast was killed, and the stone key was taken away. Outside the stone mountain, 2 groups of people had their throats slit with a single sword. The many people who had heard the news and wanted to kill Longchen felt a chill run down their spines. Most of the people who died were in the middle stage of the soul transformation realm. This miserable state was enough to show Longchen's strength. Although these people are not from the 9 great empires and their strength is only considered to be below average, this kind of miserable state is enough to show that this mission is not easy to complete. This person is in the top 3 of the heavenly ranking. I'm afraid that only Jianzhi San and the Wind Marquis can fight with him. It's said that these 2 have reached the late stage of the soul transformation realm and are rare geniuses of the Big Dry Empire. On the other side, although Longchen had killed many people, and his decisiveness and combat power had shocked the people who followed him, none of them looked good. The road of immortal ascension was filled with the best of the younger generation. Now that the road of immortal ascension had just opened and they had already encountered such a situation, the dangers ahead could be imagined. Longchen naturally knew what they were thinking, but he did not say anything. In fact, he knew that even without these people, there would not be more than 5 people who could pass the road of immortal ascension and become disciples of the 5 great sections. After all, there were only so many stone keys. If he wanted these people to have the required number, it would be a very difficult matter. Here are the things we got from the secret cave. There is a weapon melting stone and a thunder note talisman. They might be useful in the future. A young disciple behind Longchen handed the things he got from the secret cave to Longchen. Longchen originally wanted to refuse, but when he saw the weapon fusing stone, his eyes flashed and he reached out to take it. The weapon fusion stone was a special material of the 100 Smelting Clan's weapon refining branch. It could be fused with many weapons by injecting spiritual power into it. It had many uses for weapon refining. Longchen had seen many of these items in his previous life, but they were not very useful. They were even more useless when used to repair damaged weapons. For example, if he were to use this spirit melting stone to repair the broken weapon that he had obtained from the National Treasury, even if he could restore it to its original state, the array inside would not be able to be used. It was as if a piece of scrap iron had been repaired, but now, Longchen had an idea. If the broken weapon was really an ancient weapon, then it should be at least an Emperor-grade weapon. An Emperor-grade weapon might not be much in his previous life, but if he had it now, it would be very beneficial to Longchen. If it was in his previous life, even if he had more spirit-melting stones, he would not be able to repair an ancient broken weapon. After all, almost no one could repair the array inside. Even the people of the 100 Smelting Clan were the same. But now, he had the inheritance of arrays. If he could crack the array inside, it might be possible to repair it with the spirit-melting stone. Longchen thought so and had the mentality to give it a try. "Let's continue to move forward and collect more stones," Longchen said. Everyone nodded, but they were very confused. The talisman was extremely precious in their eyes, but it was worthless in Longchen's eyes. In the first half of the Path of Immortality, the core was to enter the secret cave and kill the monsters to obtain the stone key and the things left behind by the big sections. The reason for this was, on one hand, to reduce the number of people. On the other hand, it was to test the real combat power of the participants. After all, they were all semi-god realm cultivators, but their combat power could be very different. After the first 2 groups that surrounded Longchen were killed, the Path of Immortality became much more peaceful. Until the sun set in the west, no one attacked again. The first part of the Path of Immortality is about to end. You don't have to look for the secret cave in this part of the Path of Immortality. I will look for it myself. Longchen seemed to be a little serious. Everyone agreed immediately. Although they had helped Longchen find the secret cave along the way, Longchen had killed almost all the demonic beasts in the cave. As for the stone key, Longchen did not keep it to himself. He chose to share it with them. Of course, they also knew that the chances of entering the 5 big sects were still very slim. In the past, it was very rare for the Black Dragon Empire to have 5 people enter the 5 big sections. After all, the Black Dragon Empire was the weakest among the 9 great empires. As they followed Longchen, they realized why Longchen asked them to slow down. The originally wide mountain range gradually narrowed. The dense forest also gradually disappeared. Gradually, they entered the plains. However, on the plains in front of them, there were small black stone hills. When they looked up, they were densely packed together like ant nests. Not only that, because this part of the Path of Immortality was a plain, and the path narrowed, the participants who were originally going in different directions gradually appeared in their field of vision. For a moment, figures flashed in all directions. Every group began to be careful. After all, there were no restrictions on the Path of Immortality. It was not impossible for people to kill each other and steal the stone key. Is that the guy from the Black Dragon Empire? The person in the lead should be Longchen. I never thought that he would be so young. Is he really the third ranker on the heaven ranking? The dozens of people from the Great Yu Empire looked at Long Chen's group from afar. Big brother Yufeng, you are ranked fourth on the heaven ranking. I don't think you are much weaker than this person. Compared to Jianshi San and Marquis Feng, I don't think this person is much. A skinny monkey-like youth beside him echoed. The man called Yufeng nodded. He looked deeply at Long Chen. Turning around, he swept a glance at the people from the Great Qian Empire who were several hundred meters away. Soon after, he coldly snorted and said, I'm afraid that this person is at most 20 years old. After all, rumors are just rumors. That Black Widow is only a woman. I'll go and test him later. If I have the chance, I'll first kill this Long Chen before challenging Sword 13. On the other side, Jianshi San and Marquis Feng did not even look at Yufeng. Since the two of them arrived here, their eyes had been fixed on Long Chen. That day when Long Chen forced Jianshi San to retreat with his sword, it had always been a thorn in Jianshi San's heart. Marquis Feng was ranked first on the heaven ranking and could be considered one of the top youths of the various empires. Chapter 186. Provocation. Feng Ming Marquis warning made Jianshi San's face turn incomparably pale. Originally, the two of them had planned to avenge Long Chen's sword on the immortal Ascension road. However, ever since the 300,000 soldiers of the Deqian Empire had been defeated and returned home, Huang Piluo had repeatedly warned them to avoid fighting Long Chen head-on on the immortal Ascension road. Humph, I don't know what the Emperor is thinking. Even if Long Chen is strong, he is still only in the soul formation realm. You and I have both reached the late stage of the soul formation realm and he only defeated me with his sword. If it was a life and death battle, he would not be able to survive. Jianshi San's face was gloomy. He had always been obsessed with the way of the sword and was still holding a grudge against Long Chen for defeating him with a single sword. Alright, there are so many secret caves here and the monster beasts inside should have reached the early stage of the soul formation realm. You can use this chance to practice. If there are any blind people you can vent your anger on, but try not to provoke Long Chen. Feng Ming Marquis had always been careful. Although he did not know why Huang Piluo said this, he knew that there was a reason behind it. It was most likely related to the defeat of the 300,000-strong army. Jianshi San seemed to be very obedient to Feng Ming Marquis' words. Although his face was filled with unwillingness, he still nodded in agreement. But Jianshi San's mood was very bad. His entire face was drooping like the bottom of a pot. He walked straight to a secret cave several hundred meters away. Holding his sword, he shouted to the people around him, everyone scram. This is a secret cave, my big dry empire wants it. Feng Ming Marquis could only shake his head and smile bitterly at Jianshi San's actions, but he did not stop him. This action instantly caused everyone in the surroundings to frown, especially the two groups of people in front of the secret cave. These two groups of people had originally planned to lure out the demonic beasts within the cave, but now, they were forcefully stopped by Sword 13. Jianshi San, aren't you being too arrogant? Could it be that your Great Qian Empire thinks that there's no one in my Cloud Sky Empire? In front of the cave, the leader of the group, a young man around the age of 27 or 28, shouted with a gloomy expression. Following his shout, the dozens of people behind him immediately stepped forward and released their cultivation. They were all in the middle stage of the soul formation realm, and the two in the lead were even in the late stage of the soul formation realm. Cloud Sky Empire? Jianshi San was in a very bad mood, and his words were merciless. In the previous Immortal Ascension if it wasn't for the Black Dragon Empire and the Iron Mountain Empire being at the bottom, you guys would only be a bunch of trash. When the leader of the Cloud Sky Empire heard this, he was instantly enraged. He shouted, rumor has it that you were defeated by a single sword strike. Now you don't dare to seek revenge? Why are you behaving atrociously here? As soon as he said this, Jianshi San's body suddenly became cold. His eyes were filled with anger and he leaped out with the dragon-slaying sword in his hand. Suddenly, the sword light rushed into the sky like a stream of fire. San slashed out with his sword, and the mighty aura caused the wind to explode. The sword light covered the sky, and sword will slanted out. Boom! With a single slash, the leader of the Cloud Sky Empire was sent flying several hundred meters, slamming into a stone mountain. Following San's attack, the dozens of people from the Cloud Sky Empire were filled with anger. They never thought that they would clash with the Big Dry Empire in this place. Suddenly, the people from the Cloud Sky Empire charged at the Big Dry Empire. The Big Dry Empire people behind the Wind Marquis stared at the people from the Cloud Sky Empire and asked in a deep voice, "Sir, should we make a move?" The Wind Marquis looked at the enraged San and after giving two bitter laughs, he calmly said, "Kill them all. And take the stone keys." Suddenly, the two sides began to fight. The surrounding people all retreated out of fear of being caught in the crossfire. Longchen also noticed this from the distance, but he didn't care. Instead, he led the people behind him to a stone mountain in the corner. He had walked through the immortal path in his previous life, so he was quite familiar with this place. If he remembered correctly, the stone mountain in the corner should be an 8-legged lizard, which was equivalent to the peak of the middle stage of the divine transformation realm. Moreover, this secret cave was set up by the 100 Smelting Clan, and there were 8 artifact melting stones inside. He clearly remembered that this place was taken by someone else, but he was angered to death because there were only 3 stone keys inside. However, this monster was very hard to deal with. Walking in front of the stone mountain, Longchen confirmed that this was the place. He planned to enter and kill the monster himself. After all, the 8-legged giant lizard was very hard to deal with once it left the cave. It was very fast and Longchen was confident that he could easily kill it with his dragon essence. "You guys wait for me outside. Try not to clash with anyone. The core of this place is still the stone keys. As for fighting, save your strength until the end of the immortal path," Longchen ordered. Seeing that everyone had agreed, Longchen turned around and was about to enter. However, at this moment, a sword ray fell in front of him and directly cut into the stone mountain, leaving a deep sword mark. This stone mountain is for the Great Yu Empire. An arrogant voice came from behind Longchen. Yu Feng's eyes were full of arrogance as he stared at Longchen. At the same time, the mid-soul formation realm cultivators behind him stepped forward, their eyes full of mockery. Longchen frowned. The Great Yu Empire was ranked 4th among the 9 empires in China. However, this empire was very far away and was not near the Black Dragon Empire. The face of a Black Dragon Empire disciple in front of Longchen immediately darkened. He said angrily, "There are so many stone mountains here, why did you choose ours?" "Oh. The Black Dragon Empire's 3rd place on the heaven list is indeed different. In the past, the Black Dragon Empire always came in last place on the immortal path and retreated when they met someone." Yu Feng sneered. Several Black Dragon Empire disciples wanted to retaliate, but they were stopped by Longchen. Longchen looked deeply at Yu Feng and said indifferently, "Let's leave this place to them. Let's go." Although the people behind Longchen were angry, they obeyed Longchen and didn't say anything. Seeing Longchen turn and leave, the Great Yu Empire's crowd roared with laughter. This made the disciples of the Black Dragon Empire so angry that their veins bulged and their anger soared. Longchen had just walked 100 steps when he saw Ascension, who was dressed in white, appear in front of him. He was alone. Ascension casually tossed a jug of wine to Longchen and asked with a puzzled expression, "That person's cultivation is nothing to you, right? Why did he retreat?" Longchen caught the jug and drank it without any hesitation. He then looked coldly at Yu Feng and the others who had already started to enter the cave. He said in a deep voice, "I'm not afraid, but if we fight head-on, I'm afraid that the lives of these people behind me will be lost. If that's the case, why should I bother with him?" Longchen led the crowd to another nearby mountain. Chapter 187. Good wine. Tempting. Longchen looked deeply at Ascension and smiled without saying a word. Seeing Yu Feng and the others enter the stone mountain, Longchen led the people behind him to another stone mountain. This time, Longchen chose to enter the cave alone. After a short while, the roars of the demonic beasts disappeared. When Longchen walked out, he was holding 5 weapon-melting stones and 3 stone keys. On the other side, Yufeng and the others had already killed the demonic beasts in the stone mountain. However, their expressions were not good because most of the mountain was filled with weapon-melting stones. This kind of stone mountain was simply a waste of effort for them. Ascension looked at the weapon-melting stones in Longchen's hand and frowned. He asked in confusion, "Do you really need these weapon-melting stones?" Longchen nodded and said, "I currently have 25 weapon-melting stones. If I can get 15 more, it should be enough." Ascension smiled. With a flash of light, several weapon-melting stones appeared in his hand. He said, "I have a lot of these things, but they are not useful to me. Take them as a gift for the wine you invited me to a few days ago." Longchen smiled and did not refuse. He raised his hand and took the weapon-melting stones. At the same time, on the other side, the people of the Cloud Sky Empire who were fighting against Sword 13, Marquis Feng Ming, and the others were all killed. The 2 late-stage soul transformation stage experts in the lead were all beheaded by Sword 13. Everyone present felt a chill run down their spine and subconsciously retreated. They were very afraid of the strength of the Deqian Empire. In the sky, at an extremely high place, 2 middle-aged men wearing sword robes nodded slightly. Their condescending eyes pierced through the clouds and fell on Jianshi-san. "I never thought that there would be such a sword genius on the path of immortality. Jianshi-san's second place on the heaven ranking is indeed worthy of his reputation. He is also suitable for our Wanjian sect." The square-faced middle-aged man praised. The people from the various sects had used various methods to observe the people on the path of immortality. Everyone's every move was under their observation. On one hand, it was to prevent people from deliberately cheating. On the other hand, it was to pay attention to specific talents. For example, the Wanjian sect would make an exception for a genius in the Tao of the Sword like Jianshi-san, even if he couldn't walk the path of immortality. This was also the reason why the major sects would leave different things in the secret cave, such as the weapon-melting stone or the talisman spell. If the 100 Smelting clan found out that one had good talent after using it, they would be specially recruited. The Tombi sect mostly left behind some fist techniques that could be learned quickly. In the Godly Saber sect, Jianshi-san, this boy is indeed not bad. His dedication to the way of the sword is very suitable for our Wanjian sect. If his mind is tempered further in the future, he will be a promising talent. However, did you see that disciple of the Black Dragon Empire? It is said that he was able to defeat Jianshi-san with a single sword strike. Rumor has it that he is also a genius in the way of the sword. On the other side, a middle-aged man was standing on a flying demonic beast. His gaze gradually fell on Longchen, who was standing beside Ascension. The square-faced middle-aged man stared at Longchen for a long time. He shook his head and said, "This guy just entered the path of immortality and killed dozens of people. His sword moves were clean and neat. However, I don't think he is very malleable. It seems that his sword technique is old. He must have received some inheritance. His future is limited." At the same time, the major sects began to look for talents in various ways. For the strong people who had walked the path of immortality, in fact, they were more willing to find those who had extremely high comprehension in a certain aspect. Longchen had obtained enough weapon-melting stones. He wanted to repair the broken ancient weapon. This broken ancient weapon should be at least above the king stage. It was very likely to be an emperor stage weapon. As for the god stage weapon, Longchen didn't dare to ask for it. After all, god stage weapons were extremely rare even in his previous life. At this moment, the weapon-melting stones were in place. The next step was to obtain as many stone keys as possible. After all, this wasn't a good place to smelt weapons. Longchen led everyone to another stone mountain. The location he chose was relatively remote. At this sensitive time, Longchen didn't want to have a conflict with everyone. After all, at this moment, the Black Dragon Empire was the target of public criticism. What? I see that you are still alone. Don't you want to consider completing the mission with me? When the time comes, we can divide the stone keys. Longchen once again threw an olive branch to Ascension. Ascension stared at Longchen and laughed. He had an inexplicable good impression of Longchen. In fact, it was more of curiosity. For example, when Longchen first met him, he seemed to understand his temperament very well. He even knew about drinking wine like the back of his hand. And he knew that it was impossible for anyone in the 5 major sects to know about him. Confidant? Ascension didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he heard this. However, he still didn't plan to travel with Longchen. He came to the 5 major sects with the intention of sightseeing. On the other hand, he wanted to stay away from the Dark Star organization. Don't be in a hurry to reject me. If you travel with me, I can brew a pot of drunken immortal for you when we enter the 5 major sects. Longchen looked at Ascension and laughed. Sure enough, the moment he finished speaking, Ascension's words of rejection were forcefully swallowed back into his stomach. Instead, he asked in surprise, "You know how to brew drunken immortal?" Longchen smiled but didn't say anything. Ascension was stunned for a moment. Then, he smiled and said, "Let's go. I'll accompany you on this journey. However, if you lie to me, I won't let you off so easily." Just like that, Ascension was finally pulled into the camp by Longchen's offer of good wine. Longchen knew this big brother of his from his previous life too well. However, when Longchen was about to head to the second stone mountain, the group from the Great Yu Empire actually came over again. Yufeng, the leader of the group, had a gloomy expression on his face as he threw the weapon-fusing stone in his hand onto the ground and said coldly, "Did you know that the secret cave was full of trash and deliberately played with me?" Longchen and Ascension frowned slightly. The people from the Black Dragon Empire behind them were already trembling with anger. It was Yufeng and the others who had snatched their secret cave, and now they were actually looking for trouble. "Sire, aren't you going too far? You are clearly the one who snatched someone else's secret cave. Why are you making a false accusation now? Moreover, who knows if there are people from the 5 great sects in this secret cave?" Ascension said in a deep voice. Ascension's words made Yufeng's expression even more gloomy. He said coldly, "Who do you think you are? How dare you speak to me like that? Are you another small fry from the Black Dragon Empire? I heard that you're ranked 3rd on the heaven ranking. I, Yufeng, would like to exchange pointers with you today." Longchen shook his head slightly. He wasn't in the mood to reason like Ascension, because he knew that he could only rely on his sword to reason with these people. Chapter 188. Defeated by Yufeng. Yufeng was ranked 4th on the heaven leaderboard. Originally, he was very dissatisfied with Black Widow and the other 2. When he heard that Longchen had killed more than 10 people in a day and directly killed Black Widow to become the 3rd on the heaven leaderboard, he thought that those people were just in name only. Longchen's first concession made him feel that Longchen was just an empty 3rd on the heaven list. In reality, Longchen's combat strength was not strong, which was why he was so aggressive. "Get out of my way, or don't blame me for being rude," Yufeng said arrogantly, as if he was looking forward to Longchen's concession. That way, he would feel great satisfaction. What welcomed him was the cold gleam of a long sword. Yufeng's speed was extremely fast, and his strength was not weak. The moment Longchen made his move, he retreated into the crowd behind him. Then, he stared at Longchen with eyes as sharp as knives and laughed coldly. "What, you can't hold back anymore? Then let me see how strong your swordsmanship is compared to the Jianshursan's." As Yufeng's voice fell, a black iron long sword appeared in his hand, and the aura around him suddenly became cold. A long sword appeared in Ascension's hand, but he did not intend to make a move. He just stood behind Longchen. Since he had agreed to travel with Longchen, he would naturally join forces with him. However, he had no enmity with Yufeng, so he would not make a move. The battle between Longchen and Yufeng immediately attracted the attention of people from all directions. This was the second battle between the Deqian Empire and the Yuntian Empire. Isn't that someone from the Black Dragon Empire? The one leading the battle with Yufeng should be the famous Long Chen. Why are the two of them fighting? Yufeng is ranked 4th on the heaven list. He has always wanted to challenge the top 3. Now that Long Chen has defeated the Black Widow and is ranked 3rd, he is naturally unhappy. It's just that we don't know who will win this battle. Yufeng has the royal bloodline of the Great Yu Empire. It is said that he is the number 1 of the younger generation in the Great Yu Empire. Rumor has it that his combat strength is not lower than the Jianshi-san's. Everyone was discussing animatedly because both Long Chen and Yufeng were powerhouses on the heaven ranking of the 9 great empires. Their strength was unparalleled. In the Great Qian Empire, Jianshi-san's face was gloomy, but when he heard the people around him comparing him to Yufeng, he immediately said disdainfully, "This kid is just a frog at the bottom of a well. What 4th on the heaven list? I'll take his head within 10 moves." The surrounding people immediately shut their mouths when they heard this. The scene of Jianshi-san wiping out the entire Cloud Sky Empire's participants on the road to immortality was still vivid in their minds. The Marquis of Win had a calm expression the entire time, but he was slowly led by Jianshi-san towards Long Chen and Yufeng. In fact, he did not care about Yufeng's battle strength at all, but he was very curious about Long Chen's true strength. At the same time, the elders of the 5 great sects gradually gathered together in the sky. They were all sitting on flying monstrous beasts in the sky to observe the situation below. "Yo, they've already started fighting in this place and they're both using swords. No wonder your Wanjian sect was already observing this place." An elder from the Long-Armed sect stepped on a scaled 3-winged monstrous beast and flew to the side of the Wanjian sect's people. At the same time, several elders from the Godly Knife sect wearing long robes with blade patterns also arrived. When they saw Long Chen in the distance, their pupils immediately shrank. Following them were the 100 Smelting sect and the Divine Vein sect. The expressions of the elders from the various sects were quite good. It seemed like they had gained quite a bit on the road to immortality. Only the elders from the 100 Smelting sect did not have good expressions. That person is the one who angered Qing Yunzi. The news that your Godly Knife sect and Long-Arm sect spread has caused quite a few deaths in the Black Dragon Empire. An elder from the Divine Vein sect said with a playful expression. When the Long-Arm sect and the Godly Knife sect heard this, their expressions became unfriendly. They gave a cold snort, but did not say anything. Bang! A loud sound came from below. Long Chen and Yufeng were still fighting. The black iron sword in Yufeng's hand was surrounded by layers of black water will. It was like a tsunami. Under the spiritual light, its momentum was terrifying. This is the black water sword will. It complements well with the tsunami spiritual light sword of the Great Yu Imperial family. This person's understanding of the way of the sword has already reached the entry level. A hint of admiration flashed in the eyes of one of the Wanjian sect's elders. When the people from the other 4 sects heard this evaluation, they gave a cold snort. The reason why the Wanjian sect could become the top of the 5 sects was that most of the people from the 9 great empires who had stepped onto the road to immortality practiced the way of the sword. There were many people who practiced the way of the sword. Among them, there were naturally more talented people than the other sections. This was also the reason why the 100 Smelting sect had always been the last of the 5 sections. That Long Chen is also a genius. There were 3 kinds of sword will in the sword just now. His cultivation seems to be only at the early stage of the divine transformation realm. However, all the sword techniques he used have reached the stage of perfection. It is not an exaggeration to call him a genius. Looking at the fight below, an elder of the 100 Smelting sect could not help but sigh. However, the elder of the Wanjian sect shook his head. He stared at Long Chen and said, "This person looks no more than 20 years old. His cultivation is only at the early stage of the divine transformation realm. However, his combat strength and understanding of the sword will and sword techniques are extraordinary. It is very likely that he has received the inheritance of others. Such a person will only be strong for a short time. Soon, he will be shackled by a bottleneck. Everyone suddenly understood. On the other side, the elder of the Wanjian sect nodded and said in a deep voice, "We have encountered such disciples before in the Wanjian sect. Under normal circumstances, they could not make any progress after reaching the late stage of the divine transformation realm. In fact, other than the sword techniques and sword will that they already have, they could not make any progress in the way of the sword." Everyone nodded in agreement. In the past, there were indeed very few people in the various sects who had encountered such a situation. If these people had walked the path of immortality and met the requirements, the various sects would naturally be willing to accept them. However, it was impossible to give them a place because they valued potential more. For example, Yufeng at the moment and Jian Shisan who had just fought were all talents in their eyes. It would be easy for them to reach the Void Return realm in the future. Just as everyone was discussing, Long Chen and Yufeng were already fighting fiercely below. Yufeng's face gradually turned pale because he was shocked to find that he was inferior to Long Chen in both sword techniques and sword will. He was suppressed in every way. That was not all. What frightened him the most was that Long Chen's spiritual power was constantly gushing out from his sea of qi. This spiritual power was violent and terrifying. Once the two of them fought, Long Chen's spiritual power could instantly tear his spiritual power apart. It was extremely terrifying. Boom! Boom! Chapter 189. Elder of the Wanjian sect Yufeng's defeat sent chills down the spines of the people from the Great Yu Empire. They had planned to kill the other disciples of the Black Dragon Empire behind Long Chen, but they were shocked to find that Ao Tsunqiong alone was able to stop them all. The speed of his movement technique and the level of his swordsmanship were even more astounding. If it wasn't for the fact that he didn't want to kill them, they would have been dead the moment Long Chen and Yufeng started fighting. Long Chen slowly walked towards Yufeng. He looked at Yufeng, who was bleeding from the corner of his mouth, and said, "Do you still want to see how strong I am?" As Long Chen spoke, he raised the sword in his hand and was about to kill him. On this immortal ascension path, if one didn't die, one would die. Long Chen wasn't going to be so kind as to let go of someone who was filled with hatred towards him. As he spoke, Long Chen's sword light descended upon Yufeng's head. Yufeng's face paled, and he felt a chill run down his spine. He hurriedly tried to block it, but his attack was pale and powerless in front of Long Chen. However, the sword didn't fall for a long time. A Wanjian sect elder was standing in front of Long Chen with a smile on his face. Under everyone's gaze, Long Chen's longsword couldn't move an inch. It was frozen in the air. Long Chen's face instantly turned ugly. He slowly withdrew his longsword and said coldly, "This is the path of immortality. May I ask what is the meaning of this, elder of the Wanjian sect?" When the Wanjian sect elder heard Long Chen's words, his face turned cold. He said in a low voice, "How dare you, a semi-god realm cultivator, speak to me in such a tone? Don't think that you can do whatever you want just because you have some inheritance. These things might be able to give you unparalleled battle prowess before you enter the 5 great sects, but once you enter the 5 great sects, you'll be nothing." Long Chen's brows furrowed slightly. He had never expected that an elder of the Wanjian sect would personally step in to save Yufeng. This elder's cultivation was at least at the late stage of the Void Return realm. He was definitely not someone Long Chen could contend with. Although he remembered that in his previous life, Yufeng had also walked the path of immortality and entered the Wanjian sect, he still hadn't finished walking the path of immortality. "Yufeng, this is the immortal ascension writ. From today onwards, you are an outer sect disciple of the Wanjian sect. Remember to cultivate well. When you reach the Void Return level, this person might still be an insignificant Void Return level disciple." The Wanjian sect elder casually tossed a token engraved with sword patterns into Yufeng's hand. For a moment, the changes in the scene made everyone unable to react. Even Yufeng was a little stunned. Soon after, he burst into laughter, unable to contain his joy. He had never thought that although he had lost the battle with Long Chen, he would be chosen by an elder of the Wanjian sect. Moreover, he would be given the opportunity to enter the Wanjian sect. The Wanjian sect elder glanced at Long Chen with contempt. However, he knew that his actions were somewhat against the rules, so he didn't continue to do anything. He turned around and was about to leave with Yufeng. However, Yufeng, who was behind him, slowly turned his head and looked at Long Chen mockingly. The smile on his face deepened. I was wondering why your swordsmanship was so swift and fierce. It turns out that it was an external force. I hope you don't die on the path of immortality. One day in the 5 great sects, I'll definitely cut you down with my sword. Long Chen looked at Yufeng and the elder behind him. He said in a low voice, when that day comes, I'm afraid you won't be so lucky. When that time comes, my sword won't be as slow as it is today. Long Chen's words made Yufeng's face turn ashen. He was about to continue to mock Long Chen, but unfortunately, Long Chen turned around and walked away. Yufeng swung his sleeves and was about to follow the Wanjian sect elder and leave. However, a voice behind him made his whole body tremble. Long Chen said indifferently, kill everyone from the Great Yu Empire for me, kill them all. As soon as these words were spoken, the surroundings were in an uproar. Even the Wanjian sect elder couldn't help but freeze. Long Chen's actions were clearly revenge for him saving Yufeng. As soon as Long Chen's voice fell, the disciples of the Black Dragon Empire rushed out. It was the Great Yu Empire who had provoked them repeatedly. They had only been forced to fight back. Moreover, this was the road of immortal ascension. The Wanjian sect's blatant favoritism made them furious. At the side, Ao Tsungqiong frowned slightly, but he didn't make a move. Long Chen also joined in with his sword. The strength of the disciples of the Black Dragon Empire wasn't enough to deal with the people of the Great Yu Empire. As soon as Long Chen entered the battlefield, mournful screams filled the air. In a short time, everyone from the Great Yu Empire was killed. Long Chen looked at the corpses on the ground. His heart was calm and he didn't feel the slightest bit of guilt. He knew that if Yufeng won today, the elders of the 5 great sects wouldn't come to their rescue. What awaited them was a dead end. He was an Ao Tsungqiong. He didn't have any righteousness. Those who killed should be killed. That was Long Chen's way of life. Seeing that Ao Tsungqiong didn't make a move, Long Chen wasn't surprised. He even felt that if this wasn't the road of immortal ascension, his big brother would have stopped him. On the other side, Yufeng stood in a daze. His eyes were wide open, and his body couldn't help but tremble. Poochie! Finally, Yufeng spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground, unconscious. The Wanjian sect elder's face was extremely ugly. He stared deeply at Long Chen and snorted coldly. He stretched out his hand and used his divine sense to lift Yufeng up onto the flying demonic beast. Everyone present shook their heads when they saw this scene. Long Chen's action not only completely broke with Yufeng, but also angered the Wanjian sect elder. It was unwise. On the other hand, everyone knew that the mission given by the Tongbi sect and the Godly Knife sect wasn't as easy as they thought. Wanting to kill Long Chen and obtain 3 spots to enter the 5 great sects was not an easy task. The people from the Great Yu Empire participating in the road of immortal ascension had all been killed. This was the second empire to be destroyed after Jian Shursan's Cloud Sky Empire. Everyone sighed. This was the end of the first stage of the road of immortal ascension. Originally, everyone was supposed to kill as many demonic beasts as possible to obtain as many stone keys and resources as possible. But now, in just 2 battles, 2 empires had been destroyed. At this moment, everyone knew that the later stage of the road of immortal ascension would be extremely tragic. On the other side, where the people of the Great Dry Empire were. The Marquis of Wind looked at Jian Shursan and lightly said, "No wonder this person's battle strength is so strong. That day when you fought with your sword, you were defeated with a single strike. So it was because of external help. That's more like it. This person isn't even 20 years old, but his sword skills and sword intents have all reached perfection. This is simply unbelievable." Jian Shursan coldly snorted. Chapter 190. the middle ground in the first stage, 2 of the 9 empires were destroyed. Only the disciples of the 7 empires were left, and some of them were not from the 9 empires. After the destruction of the younger generation of the 2 empires, the situation calmed down. Almost all the conflicts between the empires were reduced. All the forces wandered between the stone mountains, trying their best to kill the demonic beasts and steal the stone keys, until the next morning, the stone mountains on the plains were cleared. Many giant demonic beast corpses lay on the ground. As the cold wind blew, it emitted a bloody smell. Of course, the demonic beasts were not the only ones that died. There were also disciples of the various empires, and there were even late divine transformation realm cultivators among them. There were 3 demonic beasts in the stone mountains on the plains that were comparable to late divine transformation realm cultivators. After they appeared, they killed many disciples of the empires. One of them was killed by Marquis Feng Shou within 10 moves with his folding fan. He obtained 30 stone keys, a 7th grade king-ranked martial art, and a jade slip of the Luanyan fist. If someone who practiced fist techniques obtained this jade slip, it would be a great opportunity. However, for Marquis Feng Shou and Jian Zhisan, it was useless. On the other side, Longchen relied on his memory to kill one of the 3 demonic beasts and obtain the most stone keys. Just one demonic beast alone gave him 50 stone keys. Not only that, this demonic beast also gave him many talismans and jade slips with inscriptions. Therefore, Longchen gradually attracted the attention of the 100 Smelting sect. Originally, with Longchen's sword cultivation, the Wanjian sect was the most suitable for him. However, they gradually found that Longchen obtained many items from the 100 Smelting sect after entering the immoral path. It seemed that he wanted to join the 100 Smelting sect. Moreover, after what happened at Yufeng, Longchen would not choose the Wanjian sect no matter what. In the second stage, find a chance to test him. See if he has talent in weapon refining, alchemy, or talismans. If he has talent, then he may be useless to the Wanjian sect, but he is a very suitable disciple for our 100 Smelting sect. The words of the 100 Smelting sect elder in the sky made the Wanjian sect elder frown. He coldly snorted, "Only your 100 Smelting sect doesn't care about people with limited prospects. That's why you are the last of the 5 sections." The other sect elders couldn't help but shake their heads when they heard these words. They seemed to share the same sentiments. On the contrary, the 100 Smelting sect elders sneered, "Yufeng's sword cultivation is above average. He can't be compared to Jian Zhisan of the Black Dragon Empire. However, you saved his life in this critical moment. Isn't it because he is of the royal families of the Great Yus? Since when did your Myriad Sword sect have to give face to Qin Yunzi?" The 100 Smelting clan's elders' ridicule was self-evident. In fact, everyone was well aware of it, but they didn't expose it. Although Qin Yunqing's cultivation was average, his followers were all over the 5 sections. In particular, some of them were the core geniuses of the 5 sections. Therefore, the 5 sects had to give him some face. The Wanjian sect elder's action of saving Yufeng was self-evident. If only based on talent, Jian Zhisan should be the first one to be given the immoral badge of Ascension. The Wanjian sect elder snorted coldly and didn't say anything else. It seemed that he had tacitly agreed. On the other side, the first stage of the immoral path had finally come to an end after the 3 strongest demonic beasts were killed. After a short rest, everyone set off again. In the second stage of the immoral path, Longchen led the remaining Black Dragon Empire disciples forward. In front of them was still an endless plain. However, there were no stone mountains. Instead, there were 5 huge stone gates that blocked everyone's way. Longchen knew that most people would be eliminated in the second stage. Because this stage tested whether a person had a certain talent, such as sword skills, saber skills, fist skills, alchemy, bloodline, and so on. Only when one's talent met the requirements could they enter the stone gates. Once they entered the stone gates, they would enter the last stage of the immoral path. At that time, as long as they had enough stone keys, they would be able to enter the 5 sections. As they gradually approached the stone gates, two groups of people behind Long Chen were eyeing them covetously. These two groups of people didn't have many stone keys. Secondly, the resources they obtained in the first stage were extremely limited. The chances of them breaking through the second stage were very small. They had no choice but to think of his team to attack. In the Black Dragon Empire, Long Chen's team was naturally the first choice. Because if they defeated Long Chen, not only would they obtain a large number of stone keys, but they would also obtain many resources to display their talent. They could even obtain 3 places to enter the Godly Saber sect or the Tombi sect. This kind of temptation was really irresistible to the various sections. Although Long Chen's battle strength was astonishing, the disciples of the Black Dragon Empire behind him were the weakest among the disciples of the various sections. Although the two groups of people followed closely behind, they were extremely cautious and didn't attack immediately. They were very afraid of Long Chen. After all, the scene of him defeating Yufeng was still vivid in their minds. If they attack first, I can help you. But I hope you don't kill them as much as possible. If they weren't forced by the situation, I don't think they would attack you. Ao Tsungqiong frowned. Long Chen looked deeply at the two groups of people behind him who were hesitating. Then, he stared at the 5 stone gates in front of him. Suddenly, a bold idea appeared in his mind. Staring behind him, he said indifferently, maybe I can give them a chance to not attack. If they are unwilling and still attack, then life and death will be up to fate. Long Chen walked forward, towards the direction of the 100 smelting sect's stone gates. He walked to the top of a huge pill cauldron symbol on the ground. Then, the air in front of him flashed and inscriptions appeared out of thin air. Then, a pill cauldron that could be hugged by 2 people appeared in front of everyone. At the same time, the elders of the 100 smelting sect in the sky all looked at Long Chen attentively. Long Chen's mind moved, and the flame under the giant cauldron flickered and shot out. He wants to try to refine pills, but he has collected a lot of weapon melting stones. The elders of the 100 smelting sect were quite puzzled. But soon, they discovered a shocking fact. That was, Long Chen's fire controlling technique had actually reached a level that left people flabbergasted. Then, he even threw the elixirs that he had obtained from the secret cave into the cauldron. It was as if everything was natural and skillful. These few short movements actually revealed an extremely strange sense of beauty. In just a moment, the two groups of people behind him gradually could not sit still. If Long Chen was recognized by the 100 smelting sect and was the first to pass through the 5 stone gates, then they would have no chance. But when they gritted their teeth and rushed towards Long Chen retreated from the side of his face where he had just been. He looked at the crowd and said, even if you don't have the resources, I can still let you test your talent, but it is limited to the 100 smelting sect. Chapter 191. Test one's talent. The two groups of people who had planned to attack Long Chen were startled. They looked at each other, not knowing what to do. After a while, the leaders of the two groups stood up and asked Long Chen in a deep voice, is what you said true? These people's cultivation bases were not as high as Yufeng's. Originally, they had planned to join forces to attack Long Chen. However, Long Chen's words gave them another choice. Long Chen nodded and pointed to the giant cauldron in front of him and said, this cauldron is used to test your talent in the second stage. I can imprint a fire controlling technique Jade Slip and a spirit array technique Jade Slip. You can use them one by one to test whether you have talent in alchemy or spirit arrays. Long Chen's words caused an uproar among the crowd. Even the elder of the 100 smelting clan who had been observing Long Chen from the sky couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Long Chen's fire control and simple alchemy skills had already surprised him. He was even a little tempted. But now, Long Chen's words shocked him. One had to know that all the jade slips left behind on the path of immortal ascension were personally branded by the 100 smelting clan's formation elders or king stage alchemists. Even if an ordinary person could comprehend them, it would be extremely difficult to inscribe them again. However, Long Chen actually wanted him to inscribe a jade slip and hand it over to the group of people behind him. Was this really possible? Elder, should we stop him? If he's really able to brand his own jade slip, then wouldn't it be equivalent to cheating in the second stage? A disciple of the 100 Smelting Clan asked with a frown. That 100 Smelting Clan elder said with a smile, even if this person has grasped some branding techniques, there should still be many flaws. Moreover, even if these people are tested, how many of them truly have the talent to refine talismans, formations, and medicinal pills? The elder of the Wanjian sect sneered and said, "It seems that this person has not only inherited the Tao of the sword but also some other acrobatic skills. With such a modeled cultivation, I'm afraid that he can't even reach the late stage of Huashan realm. This kind of person who looks like a genius but is actually a waste can only enter your 100 Smelting sect." As soon as these words were spoken, the faces of the people of the 100 Smelting Clan and even the many elders immediately darkened. However, they also knew that other than retorting a few words, it was completely useless. After all, strength was the foundation of everything in this world, and the Wanjian sect had always been the most powerful of the 5 sections. The elders of the 5 great sects sat on the wide backs of the flying demonic beasts and watched as the teams below began their tests. There were even some people who had already displayed great talent and directly entered the Stone Gate formation. For example, Jian Shirsan. He walked directly to the front of the Wanjian sect's Stone Gate array. Not only that, but he didn't even integrate any of the resource imprints he had obtained earlier. Instead, he used his powerful sword technique and sword will to kill a puppet in front of him. This puppet was also very strange. It was almost completely immune to all attacks, only sword techniques and sword will could harm it. Moreover, its defense was very high, which made many people shrink back. On the other side, the Divine Blade sect also gained quite a bit. 2 of them had comprehended 2 different blade intents and easily entered the Stone Gate array. As for the Divine Vein sect, their luck was even better. There was actually a youth in the Mid-Soul Formation realm who had a natural bloodline. This caused the Divine Vein sect's elder to directly hand over the Immortal Ascension token and accept him into the sect. Not only that, the Wind Marquis also someone with an ancient bloodline. The blue feathers around his body scattered and he easily passed the test, then he entered the Stone Gate array. Seeing that there were already people entering the Stone Gate array, many people were filled with envy. As for the 100 Smelting Clan, there was also a different scene. There were fewer and fewer people at the other Stone Gate arrays, but there were more and more people gathered here. The reason for this was because of the jade slip in front of Longchen. Anyone who picked up this jade slip would actually be able to temporarily comprehend the technique of controlling fire, refining pills, and the technique of formations and incantations. Although this technique was extremely simple, it was enough for them to test whether or not they had the talent to refine pills and incantations. If it was just this, then there would be people who would be suspicious. However, there were actually 3 disciples of the Black Dragon Empire behind Longchen that had the talent to directly enter the Stone Gate array. This was simply an explosive piece of news for everyone. It had to be known that at this time, not only did many people not have the Stone Key, they didn't even have the resources to take the test. Many people who practiced the sword were forced to participate in the Wanjian sect's test, but the difficulty of entering the Wanjian sect was very high. Without someone with sword intent, almost no one could succeed. As for Longchen, it was the complete opposite. On one hand, there was a free jade slip that could be used. On the other hand, everyone knew that the 100 Smelting Clan was the easiest to enter among the 5 great sects. More and more people walked towards Longchen. Every one of them cupped their fists towards Longchen. There were even a few people with good cultivations who didn't seem to be willing to owe him a favor and directly return the stone key. Longchen wasn't polite and directly accepted the stone key. In fact, he knew the meaning of these people's actions. After all, once they entered the Stone Gate array, what followed would be a battle of life and death. After leaving behind the Jade Slip, Longchen saw that all the disciples of the Black Dragon Empire had finished the test and only 3 people had the qualifications to enter the 100 Smelting Clan. Shortly after, he laughed bitterly and no longer paid attention to the people present. He turned around and walked into the Stone Gate array. Ao Tsuncheong stared at Long Chen's back and laughed involuntarily. In his heart, he secretly thought that Long Chen was quite interesting. Not only was his battle prowess amazing, but he also knew how to refine pills and array formations. Of course, the most important thing was that he knew how to brew wine. This made Ao Tsuncheong feel that this trip to the 5 great sects was really not in vain. He directly walked towards the Wanjian sect. Then, he easily smashed the puppet with his sword and stepped into the stone gate array. This scene caused the eyes of the Wanjian sect's elder to widen. He had never thought that Ao Tsuncheong, who was by Long Chen's side and hadn't made a move all this time, would actually have a sword cultivation that far surpassed that of Jianshi San's. The Wanjian sect's elder muttered to himself, "I didn't think that the person traveling with Long Chen would have such a high sword cultivation. Later, I must recruit him into the sect and draw a clear line with Long Chen." On the other side of the sky, the 100 Smelting Clan's elder finally couldn't bear it any longer. He stepped on a flying demonic beast and landed on the ground. Alright, next, those whose cultivation hasn't reached the late stage of the deity transformation realm can leave. This jade slip is confiscated. The 100 Smelting Clan's elder smiled bitterly and stared at the jade slip in his hand with a bit of curiosity. The 100 Smelting Clan had originally planned to only recruit a dozen or so disciples, but at this moment, more than 20 people had already entered through their stone gate array. Let me see what kind of array formation and fire control technique this brat has refined. It can actually allow these people to use it in a short period of time and test their talent. As the 100 Smelting Clan's elder spoke, he sank his divine sense into the jade slip. Chapter 192. Immortal Ascension Decree Pa. On the Immortal Ascension Road, the 100 Smelting Sect's outer sect elder Su Fu's eyes suddenly opened and a light flashed in them. The jade slip in his hand shattered and turned into pieces of jade that filled the sky. This made the surrounding people look at each other, not knowing what was wrong. There were even some people who guessed that Long Chen's actions had angered the 100 Smelting Sect. Su Fu did not care about the crowd and did not explain. He just returned to his original position and remained silent, as if he was thinking about something. As time passed, the second stage of the path of immortal ascension closed. The 5 stone door arrays also dissipated. Everyone who had passed through the formation had already appeared in a huge square. In this place, there was a vast mountain range behind them that seemed endless. Many disciples of the 9 great empires had never seen this place before, and some people even guessed that they had already left the 9 great empires. Only Long Chen knew that the 5 stone gate arrays were small-scale space transfer arrays, and they were currently in the trial square at the foot of the 5 great sections. However, there was still some distance between this place and the 9 great empires, but if they flew at full speed with a flying monster beast, they would be able to reach it in a month. Looking up, everyone sighed and their eyes were filled with hope. The 5 great sects were actually formed by a giant mountain that spanned over 100 miles. There were pavilions on the mountain peaks that were overflowing with greenery and green jade steps that led to the various peaks. There were layers upon layers of mountains all around, but there was a dense immortal aura and spiritual energy. Sometimes, there would even be cranes flying across the sky. The 5 mountain peaks seemed to be connected, but they were actually quite far apart from each other. At the top of each mountain, there was an enormous stone tablet lying horizontally on top of it. From left to right, it was the 100 Smelting Sect, Divine Vein Sect, Divine Blade Sect, Arm Sect, and Wanjian Sect. Among them, the Wanjian Sect was the most eye-catching. This was not because it was the tallest mountain, but rather the opposite. At the top of the Wanjian Sect was a very wide platform. This platform was very smooth, and from afar, it looked like someone had cut off half the mountain wind with a sword. Looking at it, most people were in a daze. Only Long Chen and a few others had normal expressions. Among them were Ao Tsuncheong, the Wind Marquis, and Jianshi San. A moment later, when everyone turned around, their expressions were solemn. They subconsciously distanced themselves from the people around them and were extremely vigilant. They all knew that the true cruelty of the path of immortal ascension would only begin here. After a long while, the atmosphere became extremely stifling. The elders of the 5 major sects arrived one after another, riding on their demonic beasts and appearing high in the sky. After that, the leading elder of the Wanjian sect was the first to step on the demonic beast and land on the ground. Then, he slowly walked to Jian Shursan's side and said indifferently, "This is the Immortal Ascension Writ. If you accept this writ, you can directly become an outer sect disciple of the Wanjian sect." Jian Shursan frowned. Just as he was about to speak, a hand rested on his shoulder from behind. The Wind Marquis smile was like a spring breeze as he lightly said, "Don't do anything stupid. That Long Chen will eventually have someone who can fight him, but it definitely won't be today." After saying this, the Wind Marquis took a deep look at Ao Tsungcheong. It was as if the real threat in his eyes was not Long Chen, but rather Ao Tsungcheong beside Long Chen. Jian Shursan nodded his head unwillingly. He coldly looked at Long Chen and then took the Immortal Ascension Writ. When the Wanjian sect elder saw this scene, he began to laugh. He looked at Long Chen with disdain and then casually said, "I heard that you lost to this person in a sword move in the Big Dry Empire. If you want to fight him, you will have plenty of opportunities. He will most likely enter the 100 Smelting Sect. A month from now, you new outer sect disciples will hold a joint challenge. At that time, you will have plenty of opportunities to crush him. You have to know that the first month after entering the 5 great sects is the greatest change. With your talent in the way of the sword, a single month is enough for you to undergo an earth-shattering change." Jian Shursan nodded his head and cupped his fist as he followed behind. Then the Wanjian sect elder walked towards Ao Tsungcheong, but his expression was not good. After coldly looking at Long Chen, he said to Ao Tsungcheong, "Your talent in the way of the sword is above Jian Shursan's. You can also obtain the Immortal Ascension Writ and directly become a disciple of the Wanjian sect. However, you have to draw a clear line between yourself and this Long Chen." Long Chen was standing beside Ao Tsungcheong, but the elder's words did not contain the slightest taboo. This caused Long Chen to frown, but in his heart, he also knew why the Wanjian sect was so against him. 30% of the reason was because of Yufeng, and 70% was because of the Godly Sword sect's wandering cloud elder, Qing Yunzi. According to the memories of his previous life, among the direct disciples of the Wanjian sect, one of them was personally promoted by Qing Yunzi from the 9 great empires. Long Chen had a deep impression of this person because in his previous life, when Long Chen was in the Wanjian sect, this person had died at his hands. Just as Long Chen was reminiscing, Ao Tsungcheong shook his head and said, "I can enter the Wanjian sect with or without the Immortal Ascension path. As for the rest, it doesn't seem to be up to you to care." The Wanjian sect elder's expression suddenly froze, and the Immortal Ascension Writ in his hand stiffened. In the end, he could only give a cold shout and leave. Following that was the Divine Vein sect. Naturally, the Wind Marquis was handed over the Immortal Ascension Writ without any suspense. The other sects also began to move. Every sect had 3 Immortal Ascension Writ, and the person who obtained the Immortal Ascension Writ could directly become an outer court disciple of the 5 great sects. On the other side, the 100 Smelting Sect elder immediately walked in front of Long Chen and asked in a deep voice, "Was that jade slip really something you made on the spot? It was inscribed with your divine sense." Long Chen nodded his head. The 100 Smelting Sect elder did not hesitate at all and directly handed the Immortal Ascension Writ to Long Chen. Long Chen took the Immortal Ascension Writ, but did not immediately agree. Instead, he said in a deep voice, "The 3 disciples of the Black Dragon Empire behind me also have the talent to enter the 100 Smelting Sect. I don't know if it's possible to let them enter the 100 Smelting Sect as well." Su Fu slightly knit his brows when he heard this, but he immediately said, "I've seen the 3 of them and their talent is not bad. It's not impossible to give them the Immortal Ascension Writ, but I only have 3 Immortal Ascension Writ. After giving you one, I only have 2 left." Long Chen's mouth revealed a smile. He had already noticed the talent of these 3 people. Although they could not be considered outstanding, they were definitely outstanding among the people who had chosen to enter the 100 Smelting Sect. Otherwise, he would not have said these words. Then I asked the elder to give the immortal ascension writ to the three of them. I, Long Chen, am eternally grateful for this kindness. Long Chen replied. These words caused an uproar in the surrounding people. Even Ascension could not help but raise his brows. Chapter 193. Side by side, the 100 smelting sect elder glanced around and asked in a deep voice, "Do you really want to make this choice? You are like a living immortal ascension order in their eyes. As long as they kill you, they will have 3 spots and can enter the Longbai sect or the Godly Knife sect." However, Longchen smiled faintly and said, "Then we'll have to see if they have the strength to take my head." The faces of the people around turned ashen. Many of the people with weaker cultivations chose to retreat. Most of these people had lower cultivations than Yufeng. Moreover, they had received Long Chen's favor during the test, so they did not dare to fight with Long Chen. On the other side, there was a group of people who stared at Long Chen. Just as the 100 smelting sect elder Sufu said, Long Chen was a living immortal ascension order in their eyes. After the elders of the 5 great sects finished selecting the candidates to be promoted to outer disciples, they immediately left the square where Long Chen and the others were. Soon after, the elders of the various large sects took the lead and announced the rankings and rules of this recruitment one by one. The Wanjian sect is recruiting 20 disciples. The number of stone keys must reach 100. The Longbai sect is recruiting 10 disciples. The number of stone keys must be 80. The Godly Pulse sect is recruiting 13 disciples. The number of stone keys must be 50. After 3 hours, if you can meet the requirements, you can enter any sect. There are no other rules. After the requirements of the various sects were announced, the entire square became tense. Everyone knew that these 3 hours would be a chaotic battle. Outside the square, Jian San and Marquis Feng's eyes fell on Long Chen. They wanted to see what kind of strength Long Chen had today. In the square, after the elders of the 5 great sects finished speaking, the scene suddenly changed. The square was unexpectedly divided into 3 areas. The first area was Long Chen and Ascension. In the second area, there was a group of soul formation advanced stage cultivators. Some of them were from the 9 great empires, some were on the heaven roll, and some were not well known, but their auras were not weak. They seemed to be very confident. Finally, the third area was very obvious. The strength of these people was obviously 1 level lower. They knew that they were not a match for Long Chen. Moreover, most of them had received Long Chen's favor when they had just been tested. Naturally, they would not be so stupid as to think of attacking Long Chen. Long Chen had easily defeated Yufeng, which was enough to make this group of people retreat, not daring to have the slightest bit of hope. Long Chen looked at the dozens of people in the second area. He knew that these people were his real opponents. With the help of his divine mind, he was able to see the cultivation of this group of people. The weakest among them was at the 7th tier of the divine transformation realm. In other words, each of these people was an expert in the advanced stage of the divine transformation realm. Long Chen was confident that he could defeat a late-stage divine transformation realm cultivator easily. Even if he had to face an early-stage divine transformation realm cultivator, he could still fight or even win. However, when these dozens of people worked together, their strength was not to be underestimated. Among them, a few young men in their late 20s walked out of the crowd. They looked at Long Chen mockingly, then said to the people next to them, "Kill the 2 of them and divide the stone keys equally. The 3 spots that they represent will also be given 1 spot each." It turned out that these dozens of people belonged to 3 different forces. At this moment, in their eyes, Long Chen and Ascension were already dead. Even the people from the 5 major sects shook their heads one by one. These dozens of people in the advanced stage of the divine transformation realm were very powerful when they attacked together. Even though Long Chen and Ascension had extraordinary combat strength, they were afraid that only death would await them. However, at this moment, Ascension was the first to speak. He looked at everyone and asked an idiotic question that stunned everyone. He said, "Are you going to kill the 2 of us?" Such a question made everyone present a little confused. Was there even a need to ask? Longchen was the only one who shook his head and smiled bitterly. He knew what Ascension meant, however, this also made him feel a little relieved. If he had Ascension's help against these dozens of people, the pressure on him would be reduced by a lot. Is this guy an idiot? Do you still think you can live? Today, neither you nor Longchen will be able to live. As soon as this person finished speaking, Ascension nodded in an extremely serious manner. The long sword in his hand had been unsheathed at some point in time. Longchen looked at Ascension's expression and could not help but laugh. He said, "If they didn't want to kill you, would you just watch them die? I will save you, but I won't kill them. After all, although the wine is good, it can't be exchanged with human lives. However, I still cherish my life very much. Since they want to take it, they are naturally prepared to be killed," Ascension said in a low voice. Longchen and Ascension went back and forth. They actually ignored the dozens of experts' covetous gazes in front of them. The dozens of people seemed to have been insulted. They directly divided into two groups and rushed toward Longchen and Ascension. The few experts who were leading the group rushed toward Longchen almost simultaneously. They all wanted to take down Longchen in one fell swoop and snatch the 3 places on the road of immortal ascension. As for Ascension, they directly chose to leave him to the others. Rumble. Golden aura suddenly spread around Longchen's body. His body floated back like a swan goose. At the same time, the long sword in his hand slashed in the air. Rays of sword light instantly turned into a violent storm and attacked the crowd. The few people's footsteps suddenly stopped, but they turned around and faced the difficulties head-on. However, at this moment, miserable screams came from the side. The few experts who were leading the group turned around and couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. They saw Ascension's long sword swinging wildly. Wherever it passed, the enemies were killed with one slash. When the people from the Wanjian sect saw this scene, they couldn't help but raise their eyebrows. They originally thought highly of Ascension. However, the strength that Ascension displayed now shocked them even more. For a moment, everyone no longer dared to focus all their attention on Longchen. The dozens of people almost split in half and attacked Ascension. Especially the few people who were leading the group. Although they were in the late stage of the soul formation realm, their strength was far superior to the others. They had no choice but to split 3 people to suppress Ascension. This greatly reduced the pressure on Longchen. Longchen looked at the people in front of him and then looked at Ascension. In the previous life, the two of them fought with their backs to the wall. The rulers of the 10 directions celestial domain trembled. Today, the two of them joined forces again. How could they be defeated? 17 people, 2 hours. Scales began to appear on Longchen's body. A powerful aura gradually enveloped his entire body. Ascension heard his voice from afar. He was stunned for a moment before he replied, 14 people, 1 incense stick's worth of time. As the two of them finished speaking, they actually rushed forward together, rushing into the midst of the opponents who had originally surrounded them. This scene caused the people around them to tremble in fear. Chapter 194. Another sword duel. The two groups were separated, but they still had the absolute advantage in terms of numbers. The moment Longchen and Ascension charged into the crowd, everyone cried out in surprise. Even the other people on the field stopped fighting. Among the elders of the 5 major sects, the people of the Wanjian sect had a whole new level of respect for Ascension. Unlike Longchen, Ascension's attacks always carried a kind of awe-inspiring chi. His martial arts skills had not reached the stage of perfection, but his awe-inspiring sword will was extremely solid. Apart from the Wanjian sect, the elders of the Divine Pulse sect were also staring at Longchen. They had never thought that not only was Longchen's swordsmanship extraordinary, but he also possessed an ancient bloodline. Most of the disciples of the Divine Vein sect had ancient bloodline and had outstanding combat strength. Among the 5 sects, their combat strength was second only to the Wanjian sect. Looking at Long Chen's scales, which made him look like a deity, the elder of the Holy Pulse sect couldn't help but feel puzzled. Long Chen's swordsmanship was world-shocking, and his combat capability was unparalleled. If he had not chosen the Wanjian sect, it would have been fine. However, his bloodline power could not be faked. He could have chosen to enter the Holy Range sect. Why did he choose the weakest 100 smelting sect? Boom! In the arena, Long Chen and Ao Tsuncheong's battle prowess was astonishing, causing the 5 great sects to raise their eyebrows. Both of them possessed combat prowess comparable to Return to Void stage mighty figures, and each of them was able to fight against a dozen or so Soul Formation stage mighty figures. Time ticked by, and in the blink of an eye, 15 minutes had passed. At this moment, the more they fought, the more shocked they became. Regardless of whether it was Long Chen or Ao Tsuncheong, both of them actually possessed extremely profound movement martial skills. They were able to move around the group of over 10 people with ease, not giving them any chance to attack together. Ao Tsuncheong killed an enemy with a swing of his sword, then retreated quickly and turned around to tease Long Chen, "If this goes on, you won't be able to finish off 17 people in 2 hours. The corners of Long Chen's mouth curled into a smile. He leaped into the air, and his powerful scale armor ignored the attacks coming from all directions. At the same time, he pointed his sword at the sky. Sword art, dragon drawing art. Following Chang Chen's shout, the sword light under his sword swayed, bringing with it the sound of wind and thunder. It was as if a huge dragon had rushed out from the clouds and descended. Rumble! A huge crack that was more than 100 meters long was instantly blasted open on the entire field. Wherever the sword passed, a group of people would scream endlessly. This sword strike was able to render several Soul Formation final stage cultivators useless. At the same time, the elders of the Myriad Swords sect and the Divine Pulse sect stood up at the same time and cried out. What kind of bloodline power is this? It actually had such a strong defensive power, resisting the attacks of several Divine Transformation Realm experts. That was an Emperor Tier Sword technique, an Emperor Tier Sword technique that has reached perfection. For a moment, everyone cried out in surprise. The Emperor Tier Sword technique that had reached perfection made everyone's eyes almost pop out. The Elder of the 100 Smelting sect also changed his expression slightly. He immediately stared at the Elder of the Wanjian sect and ridiculed. In the eyes of the Wanjian sect, the so-called inheritance is just a shackle. Why are you making such a fuss? The Elder of the Wanjian sect turned green and red. He snorted coldly, feeling that he had lost his composure. In terms of timing, if he had known that Long Chen possessed an Emperor Tier martial arts technique that had reached perfection, he would not have sneered at Long Chen like this. Behind him, Jian Shisan's eyes were filled with fighting spirit. He had always been obsessed with swords. At this moment, seeing that Long Chen had used an Emperor Tier martial arts technique that had reached perfection, his heart was burning with the desire to fight. In the field, with Long Chen's sword strike, the situation on both sides had become one-sided. Damn it, how can this person be so powerful? Everyone showed a hint of fear towards Long Chen and Ao Tsuncheong. For a moment, no one dared to attack the two of them again. The combat strength of Long Chen and Ao Tsuncheong was simply beyond their imagination. One of them was in the early stage of the Divine Transformation Realm, while the other was in the middle stage of the Divine Transformation Realm. However, their combat strength was comparable to that of the Void Return Realm. This was simply too terrifying. After a brief hesitation, these people's faces turned pale. In the end, they slowly retreated and set their eyes on another group of people who were slightly weaker. The two of them were too strong. These people even thought that if they continued to fight, they would pay a painful price even if they defeated Long Chen. Moreover, time was gradually running out. Instead of that, they might as well take a step back and try their best to snatch the stone keys from the hands of the weaker group of people. Although this would reduce the number of people entering the 5 major sects, it was undoubtedly the safest way. Seeing these people retreat, Long Chen and Ao Tsuncheong had no intention of chasing after them. Although these people in front of them were not as strong as them, if they fought to the death, even if they won, they would have to pay a painful price. After all, these people were in the late stage of the divine transformation realm, especially the few people in the lead. If they fought to the death and used their secret techniques, even Ascension and Long Chen would be difficult to deal with. For a moment, Long Chen and Ascension stood in place. No one dared to challenge them. On the other side, the group of experts who originally challenged Long Chen were like wolves in a flock of sheep. They crazily beheaded the weak and gathered all the stone keys. This path of immortality was nearing its end. At this moment, Jian Shisan slowly walked out from behind the Wanjian sect elders and entered the battlefield with a few movements. His body emitted a terrifying aura, like a sharp sword piercing through the sky. "I want to compete with you again." Jian Shisan's voice resounded throughout the battlefield. Everyone's attacks paused. Seeing this scene, Marquis Feng shook his head and smiled bitterly. The Wanjian sect elder was also stunned. He never thought that Jian Shisan would jump out at this time. Long Chen narrowed his eyes and stared at Jian Shisan. He said lightly, "You've already accepted the immortal writ of immortality, so you're a disciple of the Wanjian sect. Do you still want to challenge me now?" Jian Shisan snorted coldly. Under everyone's gaze, he threw the path of immortality into the crowd as if he was throwing away trash. "Although you're in the early stage of the divine transformation realm, you're not weaker than the late stage of the divine transformation realm. You're even comparable to the void return realm. This is the best time for me to fight with you," Jian Shisan said in a deep voice. Long Chen heard this and looked at Jian Shisan in a new light. This person was quite upright. Jian Shisan wanted to have a fair fight with Long Chen in a situation where their combat strength was almost the same. "Idiot!" The Wanjian sect elder couldn't help but shout. In his eyes, although Long Chen's combat strength was strong, he would definitely be shackled in the future. Jian Shisan could easily defeat him after reaching the void return realm. At this point, Marquis Feng, who was standing behind the Divine Vein sect elder, stared at Jian Shisan. He shook his head and couldn't help laughing. He slowly walked down the field and muttered, "When will you change this temper of yours? But since we're going to fight, let's have some exercise today." After saying this, Marquis Feng also threw out the Divine Vein sect's immortal writ of immortality. His gaze gradually fell on Ascension. Chapter 195. Follow me for 10 years. Feng Qingho, number 1 on the heaven leaderboard of the 9 great empires. Jian Shisan, number 2 on the heaven leaderboard. Long Chen, number 3 on the heaven leaderboard. They attracted everyone's attention as they stood on the stage. Who would have thought that they would choose to step down from the stage after receiving the immortal writ of Ascension? Long Chen's eyes flashed as he stared at Jian Shisan. "You can't beat me, so why waste your sword Dao?" Long Chen's words caused an uproar among the crowd. Jian Shisan held a sword at the age of 5 and comprehended sword intent at the age of 10. His sword Dao had reached perfection, and he was considered a genius of the sword Dao in the Deqian Empire. Although Long Chen's combat strength was top-notch, his words were extremely arrogant. "Do you think that I'm afraid of you just because you have the combat strength of a void return cultivator?" Jian Shisan said coldly. Long Chen shook his head and replied, "Although your cultivation is only at the 7th level of the soul transformation realm, with your understanding of the sword Dao, I'm sure you won't be afraid of an ordinary void return cultivator, but you will still lose to me, because you will lose to my sword intent, sword technique, and sword force." Jian Shisan's expression became more and more unsightly. When Long Chen used the Emperor's stage martial skill just now, how could he not know that there was a huge gap between their sword Dao? But he knew that he could not back down today. Even if he died, otherwise, his sword Dao would be completely stagnant. He could not back down if he wanted to fight. He had been waiting for this day for a long time. Today, no matter the outcome, he had to fight. Long Chen looked at Jian Shisan. After a while, he smiled and nodded slightly. "Since our battle is unavoidable, why don't we bet on something?" Bet on what? Jianshi-san asked subconsciously. Long Chen smiled. Today, you and I will compete in 3 moves: sword intent, sword force, and sword technique. If you beat me in any of these, I will never use a sword again. If you lose, you will be my master and follow me for 10 years. Long Chen's words stunned Jianshi-san. Then he became furious and shouted, Fine, I want to see what ability you have to be my master. Long Chen smiled but didn't say anything. The aura around him suddenly dispersed, and the power of his bloodline also dissipated instantly. He raised the horned dragon sword in front of him and said calmly, The first move, we will compete with sword intent. As soon as Long Chen finished speaking, the sword in his hand slashed down diagonally under the gazes of everyone present. It was extremely flat and seemed as if it didn't have the slightest trace of strength. However, in the eyes of the many elders of the 10,000 Swords sect, all of them were shocked. Even Jianshi-san, who was in front of Long Chen, stared at the sword in Long Chen's hand before he slowly closed his eyes. Before Chang Chen's sword fell, Jianshi-san's sword slowly rose. The movements of the 2 swords were extremely slow, so slow that everyone felt an incomparable pressure in their hearts. Clang! Their swords clashed and scattered upon contact. Waves of sword cries could be heard. Separate and intersect. The exchange of blows between the 2 seemed to be a casual dance, without the slightest bit of power. It was like children playing, but Jianshi-san's forehead was gradually covered with sweat. Buzz! Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, a piece of cloth fell from the sky. Long Chen's long sword had somehow blocked Jianshi-san's long sword and landed on the corner of Jianshi-san's neck. The blade of the sword did not touch his clothes. A cool breeze brushed past the corner of his clothes, and the area near the blade of the sword seemed to be cut open. The first move, sword intent. I've lost. Jianshi-san said in a low voice. Long Chen smiled but did not say anything. His body was as calm as the wind and clouds. Then he slowly removed the long sword in his hand from Jianshi-san's neck and said lightly, 2 more moves. Jianshi-san snorted coldly. This time, he took the lead with his sword. This sword, from top to bottom, although there was no spiritual light, it had the power to split Mount Hua. This sword seemed to have no power, but it frightened everyone present and made them subconsciously take a step back. Looking at this sword, it actually had the power to break the Yellow River's dam and cut the mountains and rivers. Long Chen nodded slightly. He had to admit that Jianshi-san was really a genius in the way of the sword. This was also the reason why Long Chen wanted to take him in. However, Jianshi-san and Long Chen had little interaction in his previous life. Although they were both in the Wanjian sect, they didn't know each other. On the other hand, Jianshi-san died a violent death less than a month after entering the Wanjian sect. This was also Long Chen's understanding of him in his previous life. Bang! Jianshi-san's mighty sword strike was about to land on Long Chen's head, but it was forcefully broken by Long Chen with a light flick. At the same time, Long Chen's long sword swung, and a medium-sized mountain rock dozens of meters away was instantly broken into pieces. Hiss! Many elders in the Wanjian sect couldn't help but gasp and say in horror, this guy really didn't use spiritual power just now. He just used his sword to break the rock dozens of meters away. This guy. No matter whether he has received the inheritance of others or whether he has been imprisoned, he should still enter the Wanjian sect. He can only blame himself for offending Qing Yunzi of the Godly Knife sect. If it weren't for his relationship with the Inner Gate Elder's core disciple, he wouldn't have been targeted this time. Everyone sighed endlessly. The sword Dao cultivation that Long Chen displayed at this moment was already heaven-defying. Even some elders felt that they were inferior to him. However, everyone knew that it was impossible for Long Chen to enter the Wanjian sect. This was because the core disciple, Mo Qian, the core disciple of the Inner Gate Elder, had personally said that he wanted to take his life. And this Mo Qian was personally promoted by Qing Yunzi from the Yuntian Empire and adopted as his son. On the other side, Longchen ignored the shocked gazes of the crowd and looked at Jian Shan with blazing eyes. He said in a deep voice, "Do you still want to compete with the third move?" Jian Shan's eyes were bloodshot, and he couldn't stop breathing heavily. The joints of his long sword had turned white from overexertion. Ever since he started practicing swordsmanship, no one had ever suppressed him in swordsmanship. Moreover, it was someone younger than him. Compete. Sword of Eight Desolation. Jian Shan seemed to have gone crazy as he displayed his strongest sword move. He knew that this was his last chance. If his sword move was defeated, then he would lose completely. However, he immediately fell into despair. Under everyone's gazes, Longchen was still as calm as ever, as if his sword move was childish in front of Longchen. A casual attack was easily defeated, ka. The long sword in Jian Shan's hand flew out. He had lost completely. I, Jian Shan, have lost, but I, Jian Shan, will never become a disciple of a young man like you. Even if I die, I will never do it. As Jian Shan's voice fell, his hand moved and the long sword on the ground fell towards his neck. Beside Jian Shan, Marquis Feng's expression changed. Everything that had happened was too fast for him to react. It was too late for him to stop it. Longchen saw this scene and gave a cold snort. He stabbed out with his sword, and the golden light on it surged like a tide. Chapter 196. He wanted to see her. Jian Shan's sword shattered inch by inch and Jian Shan was frozen in place. Longchen stared at Jian Shan and said in a deep voice, "Accepting a bet and using death to renege on a debt, is this your way of the sword? Follow me for 10 years and I will let your sword cultivation reach an unprecedented level." The veins on Jian Shan's face popped out as he looked at the shattered sword on the ground. Finally he stared at Longchen and fiercely said, 10 years, we'll compete again in 10 years. Jian Shan had actually been forcefully taken in by Longchen like this. This made the people of the 5 great sects have strange expressions on their faces. The Wind Marquis on the side stared at Longchen with an ugly expression on his face. He wanted to persuade Jian Shan to go back on his words, but he swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. This was because he knew that Jian Shan would not go back on his words. On the other side, the faces of the Wanjian sect's elders all turned pale. The sword genius that should have entered their sect was now mysteriously taken in by Longchen. Looking at Jian Shan behind Longchen, the Wind Marquis slowly walked towards Longchen. His face was filled with killing intent. Since Jian Shan was not willing to break the bet and go back on his words, then he would kill Longchen. As long as Longchen was not around, everything would be fine. Longchen seemed to have seen through the Wind Marquis intentions. He only shook his head and said, "He will take me as his master and in at most a month, he will understand the wisdom of his decision today." "You don't need to do this." The Wind Marquis coldly said, "Although your sword cultivation is heaven-defying, it is only because of the inheritance of others. Do you have the qualifications to become his master?" Seeing the Wind Marquis killing intent, Longchen did not say anything. Instead, Jian Shan stood up and said to the Wind Marquis in a deep voice, "It's just 10 years. I'll follow him for 10 years and with his sword skills, I'll defeat him in 10 years. Jian Shan's eyes filled with unprecedented determination. The Wind Marquis stopped and took a deep look at Longchen. Then he turned and charged into the crowd, taking the stone key. His combat prowess was extremely terrifying. Even late divine transformation stage cultivators were no match for him. Time quickly in the immoral path. Ao Tsunqiong in the end chose the Wanjian sect and Jian Shan followed Long to enter the 100 sect. By the Wind Marquis. By the Wind Marquis in the end, by the divine bloodline to enter the divine to enter the divine bloodline. Seeing Longchen, Jian Shan, and the Wind Marquis, the 100 refining sect's elder Su Fu's face turned red. These 3 were the top 3 experts of the heaven ranking of the 9 great empires and they had actually entered the 100 refining sect at the same time. In the past, this kind of thing would never happen. On the other hand, the Wanjian sect and the Divine Bloodline sect's faces turned pale. Their two seedlings had mysteriously chosen to enter the 100 Refining sect because of Long Chen, making them very angry. A sword genius has been wasted in your hands. Perhaps in a month, he won't even be able to defeat Yu Feng. The Wanjian sect's elder took a deep look at Long Chen and said in a cold voice. Yu Feng behind him was stunned. His face was a bit strange, but he did not dare refute. After all, he knew that in terms of cultivation, he was not a match for Jian Shan. Long Chen lightly said, "We'll see in a month." The path of immortal ascension ended. According to the number of disciples who entered the sects began to calculate the resources of the empires. In this path of immortal ascension, the 4 people from the Black Dragon Empire had become disciples of the 100 Refining sect and received many resources. Although the 100 Refining sect did not have a high status among the 5 great sects, the resources given to them were enough to stabilize the Black Dragon Empire's position among the 9 great empires. After the path of immortal ascension, the resources given to the empires were based on the number of people who entered the sect. This was the rule of each path of immortal ascension. After everything was over, Long Chen and the others were led to the mountain peak by the 100 Refining sect's elder. After leaving the path of immortal ascension and entering the territory of the 5 great sects, it was as if they had stepped from a battlefield into a paradise. Even the air was tranquil. The 5 great sects were located vertically on the mountain peaks, and the 100 Refining sect was on the leftmost mountain peak. You 20 people will stay here for today. Tomorrow, I will send people to bring all the things you need in the sect. The 100 Refining sect may not be as good as the other sects, but in terms of resources, we are definitely the best of the 3 sects. Elder Sufu arranged for Long Chen and the others to stay in the small huts at the foot of the mountain and then left first. These past few days on the path of immortal ascension had made everyone feel a little tired, so they all found a room to sleep in. Only Long Chen and the 3 Black Dragon Empire disciples, as well as the Wind Marquis and Jian Shan, stood in the open space outside the huts. They raised a flame and sat in front of the huts. Why did you choose the 100 Refining sect? With your strength, even if you don't like the Wanjian sect, the Divine Vein sect will definitely welcome you. The Wind Marquis finally asked the question in his heart. Long Chen smiled and did not answer. He looked at Jian Shan and said, "Are you still angry in your heart right now? Do you feel that taking me as your master is not as good as entering the Wanjian sect?" Jian Shan gave a cold snort. Even the Wind Marquis couldn't help rolling his eyes at him. He secretly thought in his heart, "How old are you? Even if your sword cultivation is strong, how can you compare to the experts of the Wanjian sect?" Long Chen stared at the flame in front of him and said to Jian Shan, "Although your sword intent is strong, it is very simple. Your sword moves are compatible with your sword aura, but they go against your sword intent. Today will be my first lesson to you." Long Chen said this and ignored Jian Shan and the Wind Marquis. He walked forward and pointed at Jian Shan's forehead. The Wind Marquis did not think that Long Chen would suddenly make a move. His killing intent soared and he wanted to make a move against Long Chen. After all, Long Chen's current actions were too dangerous. If he wanted to kill Jian Shan, then he would die without a doubt. Wait. However, at this time, Jian Shan suddenly raised his hand and stopped the Wind Marquis. The other 3 disciples of the Black Dragon Empire looked at each other in confusion. They did not know what Long Chen was doing. After a while, Long Chen let out a sigh of relief. He returned to his original position and softly said, "How much you can comprehend will depend on yourself." Jian Shan's face was serious. His eyes kept changing as he stared at Long Chen. In the end, he closed his eyes and sat cross-legged in place. Sitting like this, he did not know if it was night or day. After Long Chen and the others left, only the Wind Marquis remained by Jian Shan's side. Until the next morning, Jian Shan was still like this. He did not move at all, as if he was meditating. After Long Chen received the token and the other items, he did not go with the others to choose a cave. Rather, he walked out of the sect. This was because he remembered that the first morning after the immoral path was when the 5 great sect's holy maidens, Yi Hailan, returned to the sect. He wanted to see her. In his previous life, Long Chen's eyes were blinded by hatred. He only focused on cultivating and had let down too many people. And this Yi Hailan was a knot in his heart that he could not untie. Chapter 197. The Resurrection of the Red Spider Lily. Yi Hailan, the Red Spider Lily of the 5 Great Sects. It was Long Chen's greatest regret in his previous life when he tried to seek revenge. When Long Chen walked out of the 100 Refinements sect, he was surrounded by a sea of people. Everyone looked at the sky expectantly. However, the sky was still cold. After a while, a flying demonic beast appeared in the sky. It was a fire-feathered demonic beast. It looked like a bird, but its feathers were like fire. It was extremely beautiful. Behind the demonic beast, 4 to 5 figures attracted everyone's attention. There were 3 men and 2 women. They were all dragons and phoenixes among men. It was rare for them to be tall and straight. The women were graceful, with waists like willows and faces like peach blossoms. When the exotic beast approached, everyone felt the temperature drop a few degrees. However, everyone looked infatuated as they stared at the woman in a light blue dress in front of the demonic beast. The cold aura emitted by the azure dress was a stark contrast to the demonic beast under her feet. As the demonic beast landed, a strange fragrance spread in the air. It seemed to blend into the air and drifted among the 5 great sects with a breeze. The refreshing fragrance caused everyone's faces to be at a loss. Every pair of eyes was staring at the woman's face in front of them. They were gradually infatuated. Her skin was like jade, her face was like peach blossoms, her eyebrows were like distant mountains, and her lips were like cream. Her every move was enough to tug at people's heartstrings. The holy lady of the 5 great sects, Yi Hailan. Long Chen looked at her in a daze. Thousands of memories flashed through his mind. In his previous life, he had risen in the Wanjian sect and had interacted with Yi Hailan several times. He had even saved her life in the sect's mystic realm. Yi Hailan looked as cold as ice, but her heart was like fire. She was unyielding and generous. She had expressed her feelings to Long Chen many times, but she was rejected by Long Chen many times. In his previous life, Long Chen was only focused on revenge. He used almost all means to increase his cultivation. He did not have the heart of a woman. Because of this, Yi Hailan was eventually pushed to the ancient desolate lands Li family by the 5 great sects. In the end, Yi Hailan was forced to marry Li Chanya, the young master of the Li family, for various reasons. In his melancholy, his 1000 severance body was completely activated, and his cultivation level skyrocketed. Under the overdraft of his life force, he slaughtered the Li clan and was later surrounded and killed by countless experts. Known as the Red Spider Lily of the 5 great sects, Yi Hailan dismounted from her flying demonic beast and slowly walked towards the Wanjian sect. Although she was the saintess of the 5 sects, she had lived in the Wanjian sect for a long time. Following her light footsteps, everyone followed closely, as if they just wanted to take a few more glances. Looking at the surging crowd, Long Chen sighed endlessly, but gradually retreated and walked towards the 100 Smelting clan. He muttered to himself, "In this life, I would rather betray the world than betray you." In Long Chen's previous life, there were only 2 women who moved his heart. The first was naturally Qing Xian, who had been with him since he was young and had helped each other in difficult times. The other was Yi Hailan. The 2 of them had fought to the death in the 5 great sects, discussing sword techniques together, and could be said to be close friends. His personality moved Long Chen's heart even more. This was also the reason why in his previous life, although he was a ruler, he was still single. It had to be known that in this world where the strong were respected, it was normal to have 3 wives and 4 concubines. Experts who had reached the ruler realm were all overlords, with many wives and concubines by their side. Only Long Chen had pursued the illusory path of reincarnation alone, and now, he had already been reborn, so in this life, he would follow his heart and not leave any regrets. Calming down his thoughts, Longchen returned to the 100 Smelting Clan. Jianshi-san was still sitting in the same place and the Wind Marquis was still by his side. When he saw Longchen, the Wind Marquis said in a cold voice, "What did you do to him? Why does he seem like he's possessed?" Longchen stared at Jianshi-san and gave a slight nod, as if he was very satisfied with his current state. He did not pay attention to the Wind Marquis and turned to leave, heading towards the 100 Smelting Clan's peak. At the same time, within the Godly Knife sect, the Long Arm sect, and even the Wanjian sect, the direct disciples of the various large sects had all received Qing Yunzi's superstition. Godly Knife sect. In the third floor of the cave, there was a 30-year-old purple-haired youth. The superstition in his hand had turned to ashes and he had a strange smile on his face. For a while, it was as if the temperature in the cave had dropped. After a while, 3 elders walked in from outside. Although the 3 of them were Origin Returning Realm elders, they were very respectful towards this person, as if they were afraid of him. Why are the people of the Black Dragon Empire still alive? That Longchen even entered the 100 Smelting Clan? The purple-haired youth's voice was very cold. The 3 late Origin Returning Realm elders immediately broke out in a cold sweat and one of them quickly explained that Longchen seems to have obtained the inheritance of a predecessor. Within the same realm, his battle strength is almost invincible. Not only that, many disciples of the various large sects have been defeated. Because of this, too many people are paying attention to him, so we are unable to personally make a move, the purple-haired youth said in a deep voice. Although foster father is currently in seclusion at the peak, he knows everything that is happening in the outside world. No matter what, I want you to bring me Longchen's head before the Wanjian sect and the Long Arm sect. The 3 Origin Returning Realm elders were scared witless. They quickly agreed and then crawled away. Who would have thought that the elders of the Godly Saber sect would be so submissive in front of a disciple? That old man Qing Yunzi's strength is not that great. I didn't expect that he would be able to connect with the ancient Li family in the ancient desolate land and even obtain a Thunder Spirit Dao fruit. If I can obtain this fruit, I will have a chance to become the strongest person in the 5 large sections. I will be the first among the younger generation to step into the late Origin Returning Realm or even the Dao integration stage. A scene similar to the one in the Godly Saber sect was playing out in the Wanjian sect and the Long Arm sect at the same time. Several core disciples of the various sects had given orders to kill Longchen. At this moment, Longchen found the elder who had received them and asked, "May I know where the weapon refining place is? I have a weapon that I would like to refine." Sufu glanced at Longchen and said with a smile, "You have an extremely thorough understanding of formations and alchemy. The things in the jade slip that day really shocked me. Could it be that you also know how to refine weapons?" Longchen shook his head and said, "I don't know much about weapon refining. I just want to use the spirit melting stone to try to repair a weapon. It was a little inconvenient on the immortal path that day, so it has been delayed until now." Sufu nodded and secretly thought that Longchen was just casually refining and did not care. He led him to the weapon refining hall on the left and right sides of the middle level of the 100 refining peak. "You have just entered the sect. In 2 days, I will report your situation to the sect master. At that time, I will make a set of plans for you," Sufu said before leaving. Longchen nodded. Naturally, he understood Sufu's intention to cultivate Longchen as a seed disciple of the 100 refining sect. As soon as Longchen entered the weapon refining hall, he immediately felt a scorching aura. However, when he entered the hall, he discovered an extremely awkward situation. There was actually a very long queue here. Chapter 198. 3 Can't Be Provoked. The 100 Smelting Clan had a total of 99 floors, and each floor had countless caves. The crafting hall Longchen was in was on a platform on the 22nd floor. Longchen looked at the long line and smiled bitterly. The 100 Smelting Clan was the last of the 5 great sects, but he didn't expect there to be so many disciples. But thinking about it, The 100 Smelting clan could be said to have the loosest entry requirements among the 5 great sects, so this was reasonable. Long Chen shook his head and casually stood behind a shirtless man at the end of the line. The man had big shoulders and a round waist, and when he saw Long Chen, he nodded slightly in greeting. He could be considered approachable. Long Chen was bored to death as he stood behind the crowd and waited. In his mind, he was thinking about how many formations he needed to inscribe on the spirit melting stone. Looking at the dozens of crafting rooms, Long Chen still had 3 people in front of him even when the sun was high up in the sky. At this time, not far away, a man walked down the stairs from above. His face was incomparably arrogant, and his body was covered in gold and jade, like a nouveau riche. Especially the shining teeth under his thick lips, they were inlaid with the best-grade spirit stones. When this person just appeared, the people around him couldn't help but respectfully call out, "Greetings, Senior Kong." This Senior Kong raised his head and nodded very casually. He walked towards the crafting room in front of him, followed by 2 servants. Their appearance was even more superior, as if their status was incomparably noble. Long Chen couldn't help but frown. This so-called Senior Kong looked more like a rich landlord in the secular world, not at all like a disciple of the 5 great sections. The shirtless man in front of Long Chen and the 2 people in front of him saw that a crafting room was empty, and hurriedly walked forward. But at this time, Senior Kong spoke, "You guys wait a little longer, these 3 cultivation rooms, I'll use them all." The 3 people who were about to enter the crafting room suddenly stopped, and their faces were extremely ugly. They had waited for so long, and now they saw that they were going to be used by someone else. How could they not be angry in their hearts? However, 2 of them quickly took a deep breath and retreated, respectfully nodding to Senior Kong. Only the bare-chested man in front of Long Chen stood there with an ashen face. He did not move at all. "Senior Brother Kong, I'm currently refining a mother-child sword. Noon is about to pass. If I don't start refining now, my efforts for the past half a year will go to waste. I wonder if..." The bare-chested man had a pleading look in his eyes. Everyone was enlightened when they heard this. A special material was needed to successfully forge the mother-child swords, the mother-child silver paste. Not only was this item priceless, if it was not added into a weapon within a short period of time, it would completely evaporate and become a pool of waste water. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Senior Brother Kong slowly walked towards the door of the refining room with a mocking smile on his face. "Pa!" Immediately after, a crisp sound rang in everyone's ears. Long Chen frowned deeply. He saw that the bare-chested man was directly sent flying a few meters, and Senior Kong had a mocking look on his face as he said, "What mother-child sword? It's just a pile of scrap iron. Even my 2 subordinates can forge better weapons than you." After he finished speaking, he and his 2 subordinates separately entered the 3 crafting rooms. Long Chen's eyes turned cold, and he was about to step forward. But he was pulled back by the bare-chested man, who helplessly shook his head. "You also wait, this Senior Kong is not someone you can afford to offend." The bare-chested man wiped the blood from his mouth and said to Long Chen. Seeing that the 3 people had already entered the crafting room, Long Chen shook his head and did not say anything more. After the 3 people entered the crafting room, Long Chen and the 3 people, including the bare-chested man, waited for a full 3 hours before the 3 crafting rooms appeared again. At this moment, the bare-chested man did not walk forward. Instead, he patted Long Chen's shoulder and said, "You go in first. My mother-child silver paste has already turned into ordinary silver liquid. The success rate of the mother-child sword is less than 1 in 100. The bare-chested man's words revealed his helplessness. In order to forge the mother-child sword, he had prepared for a full 6 months. Now, the most important material had been completely scrapped because of this sudden accident. "Who is this Senior Kong? Why are you so afraid of him?" Long Chen asked casually. Long Chen was a disciple of the Wanjian sect in his previous life, so he knew very little about the 100 Smelting clan. As for this Senior Kong, he had never heard of him. The bare-chested man stared at Long Chen and said with a bitter smile, "Little brother, you just entered the 100 Smelting clan, right? Within the 100 Smelting Clan, there are 3 paths: Talisman Incantation, Tool Refinement, and Pill Refinement. On this 100 Smelting Peak, there are 3 people who cannot be offended. One of them is this Kongyu's blood brother, and also the person with the highest cultivation in the Tool Refinement Clan of the 100 Smelting Clan. Longchen slightly nodded, but in his heart he disapproved and said indifferently, "Then what about the other 2 people who cannot be offended? They are also the people with the highest cultivation in the Talisman Incantation Clan and Pill Refinement Clan?" The bare-chested man replied, "It is indeed so. No matter if it is cultivation or refining skills, these 3 people are the people with the highest cultivation in their respective clans. Moreover, they are inextricably linked with the other large sections. They are absolutely not to be offended. Right, perhaps there will be a change in the leader of the Pill clan. It is said that the Black Dragon Empire's Pill Pagoda will send over a genius of the Tao of Alchemy." Longchen was startled, and then the corners of his mouth revealed a trace of a smile. The Black Dragon Empire's Pill Pagoda, this so-called genius of the Tao of Alchemy, was probably Lu Yi. The Pill Pagoda's influence was enormous, and it also had a place in the 5 large sections. It was just that this Pill Pagoda had become a pill refinement hall within the 100 Smelting Clan of the 5 large sections. Longchen was clear about these things in his previous life. However, in his previous life, he did not care about the 100 Smelting Clan's matters. As for the Pill Pagoda, he knew even less. In his previous life, he only wholeheartedly wanted to increase his strength and take revenge. He truly missed out on too many things. If you trust me, then give the mother-child swords to me to try. If you only lack the item to fuse them, then perhaps I have a method that does not require the mother-child silver paste." Longchen said to the bare-chested man. The bare-chested man was stunned at first. Then, he shook his head and laughed in spite of himself. "Without the mother-child silver paste, I am afraid that my mother-child swords will be useless in half a year. There is no harm in giving them to you." After saying this, the bare-chested man was very straightforward. He directly handed the mother-child swords over to Longchen. However, he did not hold much hope in his heart. After all, without the mother-child silver paste, it was really somewhat impossible to refine the mother-child swords. Longchen received the mother-child swords. He did not stand on ceremony and walked in front of the bare-chested man into the refining room. A primordial broken sword and a mother-child sword. The tool fusion stone should be enough. Longchen muttered to himself, "You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories."